Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the January 25th, 2024 regular Planning Commission meeting. I'm Sean Davis. I have the pleasure of chairing this commission. Sitting next to me is Chris Ryer, who's the Director of Planning and the Secretary for the Commission. Let's just call roll one more time.
Robin Allen.
Present.
Marcia Collins.
Present.
Eric Costello is not here. Talib Horn.
Present.
Claudia Jolin.
Present.
Doug McCoach.
Present.
Justin Williams.
Present.
Eric Stevenson.
Present.
John Davis.
We have before us our December 21st, 2023 meeting minutes. Everybody had a chance to review them? Wait a second. Before we begin, I'm going to say this, but if you're here for agenda items number 9, 10, or 13, those have been postponed into a later date. So agenda item number 9 was City Council Bill 22-0288. It's a conditional use conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to 3 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district on 2905 Parkwood Avenue. Agenda item number 10 was City Council Bill 24-0478. It's a rezoning for 1214 through 1224 Holland Street, 21 through 23 South Carey Street, and 14 South Stockton Street. And then agenda item number 13 was City Council Bill 23-0472, rezoning of 301 South President Street. Those have been postponed until a later date. So if you're here for those, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Now, getting back, we have before us the meeting minutes for our for our December 21st, 2023 meeting. Any questions or comments on those?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoach. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to our capital improvement transfers. There was the January 10th BOE meeting. There were 4 items on that agenda. Any questions or comments regarding those? The only question I have is Kristen here? Okay. Okay. Well, are there any other? They can wait for the second one. If there's no questions on it, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then we have the January 24th. There was 1 item. Any questions or comments regarding that? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I guess my only comment was when I was going through there was no, the consistency or non-consistency statements were not there.
Yeah.
I noticed it, and I'm just wondering why that was. When Kristen gets in, we can ask her. But moving on, because there is one gentleman here who is for one of the consent agenda items. We have the minor subdivision final plans for 4531 Shenley Road in the 6th District. Any questions or comments regarding those? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoach. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Collins. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have the revised final design approval plan unit development number 9-1401 South Edgewood Street. It's a garage building in the 9th District. Questions or comments regarding that? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stevenson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Finally, we have final design approval, final design approval for signage in PUD number 13, the Heck Company, 1600 Havenwood Road. Have any questions or comments regarding those? If not, do we have a motion?
So move. I missed Hex.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Collins, and your comment is duly noted. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. There was a questions regarding on the CIP transfer. There was no consistency, non-consistency statement this time. Okay, it was just omitted, right?
That was my oversight.
Okay. All right, great. I just wanted to make sure that, okay, cool. Thank you. That's okay. All right, starting off now with our regular agenda item number 8. I turn it over to you, Mr. Secretary.
The first item on the agenda is adoption of the 2024 Climate Action Plan update. Ava Richardson will present.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ava Richardson, Sustainability Director for the city. Just wanted to start the presentation by saying we came here before you all a few months ago and shared that we kind of were updating a lot of climate action plans across the city in 2023, including the disaster preparedness plan, which you heard about from Aubrey Germ last year in November, as well as DPW's update of the solid waste management plan. And so just wanted to really drive home the point that our climate action plan is one piece of our greater climate mitigation and adaptation strategies across the city, specifically focusing on the reduction of emissions and providing a pathway or roadmap to our carbon neutrality goals. This particular version of the plan is looking at kind of like the next milestone that we're trying to reach, which is a 60% reduction in emissions compared to 2007 baseline. So with that, I will pass it off to Valerie Root to give you a more detailed update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. So I'm just going to start off with a quick overview of the background of the plan's content, some key data, public involvement since the last presentation to the Planning Commission, and then discuss the implementation, and then take some questions. And let me see if this, yes, there we go. All right, so just a little background. The first climate action plan was approved just over 10 years ago. The approach of this 2024 climate action plan is to act on the lessons learned from the previous plan's implementation. First, it prioritizes equity at each step of the process, from its outreach strategy to its implementation plan. It includes a financial analysis, so we'll know what will cost the city on some of the key strategies within the plan. And it considers co-benefits and community benefits that will result from each of the actions. This CAP update is a roadmap of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 60% from 2007 levels by the year 2030, as Ava had mentioned. And in creating it, we sought to prioritize strategies that enhance the sustainability, improve quality of life, and create healthier city for resilience for residents, and focus on actions that enhance co-benefits and address equity and climate
Valerie,
justice.
if I can ask you to pull that a little bit closer or speak up.
All
so-
right, I'll lean in a little more. There we go.
Great, sorry.
Sorry about that.
What
I
mic
wrote-
number do you have?
What's that?
What mic number do you have?
This is number 8.
Number 8?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know that. All right. So just a little background, the overview of where we've been. The initial outreach began in 2022 in October. So we've been going into the communities for over a year to get this plan, input on the plan, shaping it and moving it forward. We've also we had a couple of comment periods since the time that we met last and presented to the commission, and we received so altogether with community engagement, we've had over 2,600 unique engagements. The CAP update was shaped by data and technical strategy, and equally so by community input and priorities, particularly those communicated by people in frontline communities. So just a little bit of overview of the contents of the plan. It's outlined, basically goes through just the purpose of the plan itself, how we're acting, and how we're going to carry out the plan, and how we're going to address those specific actions. This plan does include guiding principles. This is something new to the plan, but we really wanted to make sure that we anchored, this plan and the actions in it in climate resilient strategies and centering our actions on equity. So this is something that, as we're looking to implement the plan, we're really looking for the city to push this forward and look at it through this lens of these principles. In terms of climate targets, the Mayor Scott had introduced the goal of being at net zero by 2045. So this plan, this first climate action plan, the one that we're updating right now, had set a target to reduce greenhouse gases by 15% by 2020, compared to how much that was in 2010. That obviously was not high enough to reach our net zero goals. So the sustainability plan in 2019 updated this a little more, but this is taking a little further. So we set that was setting it at 25% by 2020 compared to 2007. And this aligns it with the city strategy, so we're looking at 60% by 2030, and then positioning us to move forward to net zero by 2035. And this is in line with the Paris Agreement and largely with the state's climate action goals as well. So while creating this plan, we were careful to make choices that would help reduce community problems from frontline communities and to balance the decisions with high-impact actions that will benefit everyone in Baltimore. We talked to thousands of people who live across the city. In particular, as I mentioned, we really focused on frontline communities. There were 3 interns from Johns Hopkins who came in and worked just to do outreach to communities through this, so we were able to get a really good reach. And just some relevant data. In developing the strategies for the CAP update, we first looked at data compiled to indicate where the greenhouse gas emissions were. Let's go back one. Am I going too far? Sorry, I'm trying to go back and I'm going forward. Oh, can you go back? I apologize. I thought I was going back. There we go. All right, got it. Thank you. So as you'll see, buildings produce the most emissions, followed by transportation and waste. So that was really the primary areas where we were focusing strategies in this plan. Oops. This is the greenhouse gas forecast that predicts how the amount of greenhouse gases may change over time. The city's emissions, as this shows, we have gone down since initially from 2007 levels. However, if we do nothing, it's actually going to start increasing again. And as you see with the bottom line, the projection to get to net zero is far below that. So, it shows that we have to take some really significant steps to get to that goal. So to understand how we meet our targets, the city developed a greenhouse gas reduction pathway. And this greenhouse gas reduction pathway is made up of several technological strategies. Each strategy helps reduce the greenhouse gases. So these strategies include using renewable energy and electric cars and other actions. And the pathway shows what it'll take for the city to meet its 2030 and 2045 targets. And of course, we have to understand that these are sometimes some stretches that we have to take, and we'll take really concerted action and policy to make this happen. But these are where the strategies within the plan are aligned, so that we can see where we can get, we've measured out how much we can get to those, if we take these actions, we can get to those goals. And then here are a few of the CAP areas the CAP proposes that we work for carbon neutrality, such as switching to clean energy sources, replacing vehicles and equipment with more efficient alternatives, and reducing vehicle miles and diverting waste from landfills and from incineration. So once we put together, we had the draft and really looked at the numbers in terms of the strategies. We opened it up for public comment period, and we received some really incredible feedback that you'll see reflected in this plan. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of what we heard. Sorry, I'm going back again. I apologize. This clicker is the opposite of the way I'm used to. So some input that we received is we collected this through meetings, through listening sessions, and through Conveyo, our public comment for online tool that's used by the city. We also distributed promotional toolkits to over 150 community organizations, neighborhood associations, and to all elected official offices in advance of the public comment period to promote it. And those toolkits did include flyers in English and Spanish. We heavily promoted the public comment period on social media and provided information to other agencies to help us to promote it. And we also held several meetings and presentations. So in total, we had 438 people review the plan online. We did have, within that, within the public comment period, some of the feedback that we heard was overwhelmingly people wanted to see nature-based climate solutions integrated into the plan. So that was something that we added as a section of the plan that we hadn't had in there previously. They were also interested in seeing us take a strong position as a city in supporting the Red Line project and restricting or eliminating waste incineration. They wanted to see improved public transit that connects more people, especially people in frontline communities, to destinations and public transit that is reliable and safe as well. Robust public involvement was recommended by the public in the implementation, and particularly involving members of frontline communities and environmental justice communities as well as youth. And they also wanted to see the city of Baltimore provide extensive outreach and education to promote the adoption of more climate resilient lifestyles and practices and to make it more accessible to more people in Baltimore. And then finally, they also commented that CAP should be clearly stated that it focuses on greenhouse gas emission reductions and that it builds on the other plans that address other aspects of climate resilience. So we, after getting these comments, worked to get those integrated into the plan. So I'll just quickly summarize the actions that we'll take. I'll skim through some of them because they're all detailed in the plan that I know you received in advance. So within the topic of buildings, actions include making more buildings solar ready and increasing solar and other low or no emission energy sources in homes and in neighborhoods. Many incentives and programs are already available through the state, so we'll work with them to coordinate and promote more of these resources within Baltimore communities. Other actions will focus on decreasing energy used in buildings and switching from fossil fuels to heat, cool, and power buildings. Different municipal actions will require planning, policy, and development of benchmarks, so that'll be something that we'll be working on throughout the process, earlier in the process. And then also supporting a transition to more fossil fuel alternatives. We plan to partner with utility companies to ensure a smooth transition to alternate energy sources, so there's no disruption in services. Because as we're looking to electrify more, the electric grid needs to be up to the capacity for that. So those are just outline of the actions themselves. And then many actions under buildings relate to electricity. So this section seems a little shorter, but it's because it's interrelated with that action as well. So this really focuses on grid support, electric vehicles, and equipment. So it focuses on energy reduction and transition to renewable or low emission energy sources. And it calls to study the transition of zero to low emission city fleets and equipment when viable alternatives exist. In terms of transportation, actions will focus on providing more convenient and accessible alternatives to using individual or fossil-fueled vehicles. It calls for a study of transition to zero or low-emission city fleets, as I mentioned. And then other actions might include increasing charging facilities for electric vehicles and seeking ways to increase access to electric vehicles, such as car sharing or carpooling within neighborhoods. The department, as Ava mentioned, the Department of Public Works recently worked on a solid waste management plan that included a really robust plan for zero waste initiatives. So this plan really looks to build on it, not be redundant. So we've really taken elements of that and teased them out, including calling for citywide composting, expanding organic waste diversion programs, and supporting circular economies in Baltimore. The CAP also includes actions that relate to the support of wastewater savings programs and reducing the energy used to produce clean water in the city. It also includes revising city systems like procurement to ensure climate-friendly consideration is given when city purchasing occurs. And as I mentioned, the nature-based solutions was added in as in response to community feedback. So this one really looks at preserving nature-based assets that we currently have in the city and expanding on them. It is important not only because it provides people with access to nature, but also because it is there is potential for conflict with other goals if we focus solely on the others. For instance, expanding the electric grid could disrupt migratory patterns for birds. Or community solar sites can conflict with some of the efforts for expanding the tree canopy. So, careful coordination is needed for those. Our actions will focus on, in this section, really focus on forestry and green spaces and increasing green infrastructure. These nature-based climate solutions offer significant community benefits in addition because they provide people with access to nature. This provides mental and physical health benefits while also making nature a part of people's lives, which helps to increase the likelihood of them advocating for nature and climate resilience as a whole. And then there are some actions that we'll take that don't quite fit right into one of those categories. a few of these really talk about raising awareness. This is something that we had planned initially, but the community feedback really gave us strong endorsement to, really do some concentrated awareness raising and education efforts. So we were looking to do some types of campaigns around that in the implementation of this plan. Also, increasing transparency as we progress towards reaching these carbon neutrality goals. Part of that would be part of outreach and education, but making sure there's centralized data and tools out there so that anybody can go online and really see where we're working and make what progress we're making towards those goals. And then moving forward. Some of the tools included in the plan, as I mentioned, were, we have implementation roadmaps for 10 of those actions. So we worked with the different partners throughout the city to really see what it would take to implement some of these key strategies. Of course, there are many more actions in that, but we did want to outline some of those to get a good idea of where we can move forward. There's also a financial analysis for several key municipal actions in there. Department of Finance worked with our consultants on that as well to really see how much it costs in terms of investments for the city and then what over time the savings may be. So, because a lot of these strategies are upfront costs, but sometimes over time they do recoup those funds. For instance, with solar energy, there's upfront costs, but then there's energy savings over the long term. And of course, like anything, there's always some anticipated challenges. While the plan outlines that the city can do to reach the goals, there are some challenges that as we work to achieve them. So for instance, the climate action plan, the disaster preparedness plan, the sustainability plan, and the solid waste management plan alone, just those 4 plans have over 600 actions related to climate resilience. So each of them have their own timelines. There's going to be the comprehensive management plan, the BCRP playbook, and they all will have some climate resilient strategies in there. So, we have to be conscious of staff capacity and funding within the city. Some of these will need policy changes or legislation to move forward. Of course, within the Department of Planning, we do not really necessarily implement, so we're reliant on others, public and private sector, and including communities to really get these actions to happen. And we have heard from community members that even though there's some incentives that are out there and some that we're calling for within the plan to be added, that they can be complicated to attain. There's a lot of process to navigate, and sometimes people don't take advantage of them because of that. So, these are all things that we'd be looking at within our education and outreach to try to help alleviate, but they exist, and so I want to make sure we acknowledge those. In terms of launch, we're going to be, the disaster preparedness plan just came out. You approved it 2 months ago, so we're going to be launching those at the annual Sustainability Open House together, really, doing some community education around that. We will be working with the mayoral subcabinet on climate sustainability and resiliency to start to move some of these actions forward. We'll be looking to do briefings with different agency leaders, with teams here in DOP and other key stakeholders. We'll also be looking at periodic convenings, reports, and other public information related to the plans. And again, the emphasis really on increasing awareness, education, and outreach around these because that participation and support is really needed broadly for us to reach these goals. So with that, I just have any questions or comments anyone would like to share.
Great, thank you very much. Starting off with Commissioner McCoach.
Great report. This is certainly something that is necessary as we move forward. I have a question about implementation. I'm curious what individual or what agency is assigned the job of cracking the whip on this stuff?
Well, I don't know about cracking the whip, but we are working with the mayoral subcabinet to move that forward. I can't say that there's really necessarily anyone with full authority to make it happen.
Okay.
So that is a challenge.
Okay. I think there are some obviously many, many details remain to be worked out. We're going to be building this airplane as we fly it, right? But I think some of the goals are ambitious and well-intentioned, but really hard. Like one of the actions to increase green space in neighborhoods, that one sentence doesn't even begin to sort of identify the challenges. Are we going to change the zoning? Are we going to change sort of our building codes? There's a lot of subsequent work in order to take that one action goal and turn it into reality. And so I hope that the department actually, because I'm not really seeing too many other agencies, I think the department has to take the lead in this and just keep pushing these different things. And then in particular, do you think, I'll just ask you, and I'm trusting that you're going to be, waving a flag for this. Is a 25% reduction in greenhouse gases generally driven by reduction in fossil fuel consumption through housing?
Buildings is the primary contributor. So, I mean, that's really where this strategy outlines, it puts a lot of emphasis on those areas. Because, and it's not always the easiest ones, certainly, because it does take adoption not only from municipal buildings and bigger institutions, but it's also looking at, neighborhood people's homes.
I do not want to push a deadline back on this, because we're going to confront this one way or another, and we can either do it constructively or it can be a big old mess. But it seems to me we've got 570,000 residents. It says, according to the census, 47.8 of them live in a dwelling that they own or rent. And we want to take 25% of that. 68,000 people that have 6 years to spend $5 or $10K to replace their heating systems. That's a ton of money coming out of individuals' pockets.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if it would be possible that we could start to identify some of these incentive programs. If not create,
Yeah.
I think we have, if we put a plan out there, I think we have an obligation to actually suggest tools that we can use. Because it's a planning department that's putting this out there, and it would be bad to not have suggestions. And so, just a thought. Those are my comments, by the way. I'll sit quietly.
And I do just want to add, the state has a goal, so our our carbon neutrality goal matches the state's. And so
Right.
there's a lot of federal and state investment and focus on this goal, on these carbon neutrality goals and reducing emissions. There's also a significant amount of funding under IRJA, as well as the IRA funding, including the Solar for All grant, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant funds. So these are billions of dollars that will be rolling out from EPA over the next few months. And so,
Great.
it's actually a really exciting time where we are talking about historic levels of investments at the federal level that are going to be flowing through state and local governments to reduce climate pollution.
So as a part of this plan then, figuring out the personnel and financial infrastructure of distributing that, I think has got to be embedded in this or a subsequent task.
Yeah, and
Because we don't,
I'll pass it back to you.
Yes, and that's really pulling it together is, the devil's in the details when it comes down to it, because it is part of that. We're, as you mentioned, building the plan where we're fine. This is new funding that's never been available before. And we're needing to get it out there, so I agree. And yes.
Great. Those are my
Commissioner Allen.
Thank you to Ava and Aubrey and everyone who works with you. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, Valerie. For the presentation and for the work that you do and everyone who works with you. I'm learning a lot about this, and I particularly appreciate the attention to environmental justice, and that's it. Thank you.
Vice Chair Stevenson.
No questions, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Horn.
Just a quick question regarding, I think a lot of this will have to be focused on changing hearts and minds. And sort of what is your sort of education and outreach plan moving forward? I understand that you got the feedback, which was great, but sort of how are you going to sort of communicate progress, communicate challenges, communicate opportunities to the public?
Sure. Well, actually, one of the action items in the plan is to develop that strategy. So, we've started talking about that, but we'll be putting more thought into it. I mean, honestly, it's something I'm also hoping don't want to jump ahead, Ava, but hoping to look for some grant funding to get a real campaign for this. Because there is that need to, there's so many priorities in communities, and it's easy to put things like this aside, even though it's getting more and more pressing, and affecting people and communities more and more. So, we are, as I mentioned, going to be starting off with a launch and really doing some outreach there and working with, the different neighborhood groups. However, we do need to look at something bigger, I think, at least in my personal opinion, to really try to get, more word out there, make it showier, make it in people's faces, let them see how it's affecting them, how it's affecting other communities, and really, increase that, as you mentioned, increase the care for that and understanding that this is affecting people in Baltimore more and more each year. And, it's going, and it exacerbates other issues that we have in the city, so it is pressing.
And then my last question is, do you have like a dashboard or something simple where the community can understand where we are to
Not
to
yet,
target?
and that's something that we put in the plan as one of the things that we're going to be doing. Is that we do have greenhouse gas emission studies every few years that Hopkins compiles for us. But, they're reports, they're scientific reports. And how that, I think it's not only the data, but then how that relates to actions that are happening. There's a lot of stories that are told and some elements of that in the annual report that the Sustainability Office puts out. But, that is also, it's not a dashboard. It's not something brief that's, sound bites that people can take quickly and understand, digest quickly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Collins.
Could you scroll back to the charts that showed the breakdown between buildings, transportation, and waste? Yeah, that one, okay. So the graph on the right reflects it accurately, but when I was reading the summary report, it's showing the opposite, showing waste as the larger contributor rather than the 13%. So I just wanted to point that out in the summary report. One of the challenges we have in cleaning our water, cleaning our wastewater, and dealing with our solid waste is the energy it takes sometimes to tackle these. I mean, we have consistently been over the last 30 years, excuse me, making required improvements to the performance of those plants. And with every improvement, it requires more energy. We do a lot of pumping of water at the wastewater plant. We do a lot of pumping of water at the water filtration plants. Our processes at the wastewater plants do produce methane, but we've captured a lot of that. We have a solar panel array there, but the transitioning to those plants will be very expensive because I know that, we can see probably in the next couple of years or maybe sooner, requirements to remove PFAS and so on from water and wastewater and possibly the landfills. And so that's one thing that concerns me because it's all energy-driven issues. It's not about efficiency, it's about energy. And we are bound by our permits. So while we really want to get to a net zero at our plants, it's going to take a lot of imagination and hopefully some advances in technology to help us get there. So I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Collins. Commissioner Jolene.
Thank you, no comment. Thanks, no question.
So, 2007, we have almost 9 million metric tons of carbon monoxide. And so in 24 years, we're going to reduce that by 5.4 million metric tons of carbon monoxide. Is it realistic? And then, not 15 years later, we're going to reduce it to zero.
Yeah, with the right investment, yes. But it does take a lot of work. This is, we put together, there was a lot of work put into making sure there are outlined strategies that would make it work. But, there's some things that are outside of our control, and that's where, really looking to prioritize this becomes, and that's where the pieces like the education and like, we need to get that public support for that.
So what is your role? I mean, you have your launch, but are you having like an annual checkup?
We
Or a biannual checkup saying, hey, we're on track, or no, we're way off, or we haven't made a dent in this?
It hasn't been the priority of our annual meeting at this point. Like, we've, had an annual open house, but, we are calling for doing that in this plan. But again, that's something new. We do have our annual report. There's things like that are put out there, but, it's more of a spotlight needs to be put on it.
The only reason why I'm saying this is I applaud you. I applaud the effort that the public outreach was fantastic. The public outreach that's ahead of you is going to be monumental and obviously critical. But I remember, and I'm sure Ava will correct me, my dates are wrong, but the facts are generally right. I think it was like 1990. The EPA had Maryland in a non-attainment area, and if we didn't meet X, Y, and Z by 1991, there was going to be federal mandates on carpooling and, off-work hours and so on and so forth. And I mean, people were coming up to 1991 and really, really scared of what the heck's going to happen. And all of a sudden, poof, it was gone. Nobody worried about it anymore. And it was because Maryland went back to the EPA and said, the best way for us to reach attainment is to shut down I-95. Because think about all the traffic that's coming through the state of Maryland. And EPA said, yeah, you're right. And it was done.
Yeah.
There's no more issue. There was no more talk about it. It was just like, we were all scared. It was like Y2K, My God, January 1st is going to happen and all our computers are going to shut down. I want it to be realistic for everybody to be on board, for everybody to be working towards it, but it has to be attainable. And what we shouldn't have is that last minute, okay, you're off the hook, kind of a thing.
Changed our mind.
Yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, you're right. We forgot about I-95. So,
And I mean, these are lofty goals, and they're lofty goals that are happening around the entire world. And we know the data. We know how we can reduce it. I can't say that we have it all in our control. Even the group here has it all within our control to make it happen, and I'm not going to pretend that I don't worry about that literally every day of how we're going to make these things happen when I'm looking at, my colleagues and peers in other city agencies who are balancing many, many jobs, and then we're trying to put these priorities on top of that as well. So, I mean, it is something that, the mayor committed us to it. This is how we can move forward, but there is a lot to consider, and there are some real challenges, as I mentioned, when it comes to funding and capacity particularly.
good. I thank you very much. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing that, I guess the action is for this commission to approve the climate action plan, so it can move forth.
Or adopt.
Or adopt, great. So if there is no public comments, we'll close the public hearing. Are there any questions or additional comments from the commission? If not, do I have a motion to approve and adopt the climate action plan?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stevenson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoach. Mr. Secretary, will you call roll?
Robin Allen,
Approve.
Marcia Collins.
Approve.
Philippe Horn,
Approve.
Claudia Jolin,
Approve.
Doug McCoach,
Approve.
Justin Williams,
Approve.
Eric Stevenson,
Approve.
and Sean Davis.
Approve. Thank you very much, Valerie.
Thank
We look forward to updates. All right, our next agenda item, Mr. Secretary.
So as noted earlier, items number 9 and 10 are postponed until a future date. The next item is City Council Bill number 23-0467, a repeal of ordinance number 10-397, the 25th Street Station Planned Unit Development. Eric Tiso will present.
Good afternoon. This is a PUD that was created in 2010 and updated later in 2013 that just didn't go anywhere for those veteran members that may remember it. So this is the outline of the PUD footprint. And there is the aerial, some may recognize it. There's a self-storage on the corner. The Kirk temporary bus depot is in that big lot in the back. So that's the PUD footprint as it was. So setting the Wayback Machine to 2010, the proposal at that time was a double-level major retailer and home improvement store. So there's the ground level, and then there's the other one on top of it, and another phase later on. One of those two left. They were going to do all kinds of things, and then it just went nowhere. So this is tremendously simple. In our current zoning code, we added a very simple option to remove PUDs, and it can either be that it's substantially completed, that the underlying zoning in the new code fixes the need, the PUD's no longer necessary, it's no longer consistent with the master plan, or in this case, it was abandoned by the property owner, which is what happened here. It just never went anywhere, and so we recommend approval for the repeal of the PUD, and there are representatives of the project here with us today.
Commissioner Jolin, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Collins?
No, I vividly remember the process. I have no questions.
Commissioner Horn?
No questions.
Deputy Mayor?
No questions. Some global warming here in this.
What is the source of hot air, Mr.?
All this greenhouse gas.
Commissioner McCoach?
I just have a question for you, Eric. Are there any future indications of its repurposement?
I'll leave that to the applicants if they want to.
Okay.
That would not be relevant to the PUD repeal in front of us, I'd have to say. Feel free to ask him after the meeting, though.
I'm sorry I missed that.
Mr. Chair, any questions for the presenter?
Oh, thank you. No, I have no questions.
No questions.
Okay.
Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this behalf, or on this agenda item?
Only if you all have questions for us.
Does anybody have any questions for the? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Seeing nobody else, we'll close the public hearing.
What's underlying zoning? Not that it matters that much.
C2, C3?
Yeah, it's a split. It's commercial now. It was a mix of,
C2,
I just closed my staff
C3.
report.
Okay.
M22, now it's
staff
C3 and C2.
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
Sounds
hearing none, do we have a motion? Man, I walk out to get water and you guys are already done? If I go down and get another cigarette, if I get another cigarette, what are we doing now?
Move to approve the staff report.
Thank you very much. So it would be approval, which would mean the repeal of the PUD.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Collins, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn, Mr. Secretary.
Robin Allen,
Approve.
Marcia Collins,
Approve.
Philippe Horn,
Approve.
Claudia Jolin,
Approve.
Doug McCoach,
Approve.
Justin Williams, Eric Stevenson,
Approve.
Sean Davis.
Approve.
Next item on the agenda is City Council Bill Number 23-0468, off-street parking requirements for affordable housing. It's a citywide bill, and Matt DeSantis will present.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Matt Stannis, Baltimore City Planning Department. I'll try and be as fast as Eric. He set a high bar. I feel a little pressure.
Have until 4:30,
So City Council Bill 23-0468 would introduce a vehicle parking exemption for projects that are subject to the city's affordable housing requirements. This is a citywide. The lead sponsor of the bill is Councilman Dorsey, joined by several other members. I want to mention now, in case I forget later, Councilman Dorsey wished to be present today to testify in support of this bill, but unfortunately had a conflict.
Couldn't get up the elevator.
They fixed the elevators, fortunately, just in time. So as I mentioned, This bill, it's pretty simple. It would add a new vehicle parking exemption to section 16-601 of the zoning code. There's already several other existing exemptions or reductions in 16-1601 for vehicle parking, including certain commercial districts, specifically C5 and C1, there's no vehicle parking. There's other exemptions for infill row house buildings, neighbor commercial establishments, and affordable and senior housing. The plan department is in support of the bill. Sort of there's the staff report highlights sort of two general areas of justification. One is that this legislation is sort of a natural evolution of Baltimore City's own zoning code as it's where we are now from our former zoning code. Our current zoning code has less vehicle parking requirements, as well as higher standards for new parking lots or parking garages. And then also, this bill is consistent with national trends in urban planning best practices regarding eliminating minimum vehicle parking requirements, which generally tend to be arbitrary in nature. They tend to lead to poor land use decisions, oftentimes are contrary to good urban design principles. They encourage more vehicle trips per person, which leads to more congestion, pollution, traffic crashes. And vehicle parking is very expensive. And oftentimes those who don't own cars are subsidizing parking for other folks who do own cars. This bill wouldn't prohibit vehicle parking in such projects. It simply would eliminate the zoning code requirement. So I mentioned some of these things already as part of staff's equity analysis. Eliminating vehicle parking for these projects will reduce costs, which is a direct benefit to tenants. Long term, it continues to move the city towards a government environment in which we are less focused on catering towards the needs of private vehicles. City residents who have lower incomes are statistically less likely to be car owners. So the requirement to provide vehicle parking in developments in which they live is already inequitable, as those car-free individuals are generally subsidizing what are very expensive vehicle parking spaces for other folks. This bill would be citywide. Notice was provided via Gov Delivery. And regarding internal operations, this exemption would make for increased flexibility in site and architectural design, which we oversee here in planning. But the typical development process would still apply for such projects. As I mentioned, notification that this was sent out via Gov Delivery. Staff is recommending approval. Happy to answer any questions, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeSantis. Questions starting with Commissioner Jolin.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Collins.
No questions.
Commissioner Horn.
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
Do you know when this went out on Gov Delivery? I'm just shocked that there's only one letter at all about this, but
The agenda meeting, it would have been Thursday after the agenda meeting, stand by.
The legal answer is it went out in accordance with
yeah, I mean,
with notice
I
requirements.
mean, I'm not even. I mean, this makes sense to me, and it's progressive good policy. I'm just surprised that the people who don't agree with that progressive good policy haven't weighed in. But
Noted, yes.
Probably because there's no affordable housing in their neighborhood.
I think they're missing.
To be fair, Deputy Mayor,
All right.
I did get one email.
Order.
I did
Vice
get one
Chair
email.
Steve.
I'm sorry, to answer the question, to be fair, I did get one email that conflated this with the other bill, and when I explained it, she said, okay, thanks.
The other
So,
bill being Councilman Dorsey's.
Other Abundant Housing Act bill.
Abundant Housing.
So we did get one message, but it was about something else. So at least somebody got it.
Yeah, but I do wonder if the people are thinking that it's only for the inclusionary units, not for the entire project, which I'm fine with, but
Vice Chair Stevenson.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner McCoach.
Sure, I got one. So let's take any block in Federal Hill or West Baltimore or East Baltimore that, you know, as a built-out city, we have a lot of infill sites. So let's say we got 90% of that block is living happily and parking their cars, and somebody scoops up 3 vacant parcels and decides to do, I don't know, 12 units.
Affordable units.
Well, no, I think if I understand
Only
this.
applicable to affordable units.
no.
No, it's applicable to
Inclusionary. so
everything.
that's 20, well, under the inclusionary law that was just signed by the mayor, it will be effective in 180 days,
Interesting.
would be inclusionary project.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr.
So
Commissioner McCoach, I
my
interrupted
question
you.
is simply, how do we protect the people in that block who are suddenly finding that their normal routine where they have to drive around the block 3 times to find one space, suddenly there's 12 other cars or a market-based parking allowance that they have to compete with? How do we answer to those residents?
Yeah. So I guess a couple things come to mind. So one is if such a neighborhood has a existing RPP program, the new development wouldn't
RPP meaning?
residential parking permit. Yes. Thank you. Such a new project wouldn't or the residents in those new units wouldn't be they wouldn't be able to apply for a RPP permits, or that there are strict restrictions. So for infill projects. So the existing neighbors or residents who've got RPP permits, they wouldn't then be competing with 50 new folks who now all of a sudden also have RPP permits. Those new residents, they would simply, the reality is if they're moving into an apartment or a condo and there's no off-street parking provided and they can't get an RPP permit, then they likely, that's the burden is on those new residents. So maybe they realize, well, if I can't park my car in the neighborhood,
It's a deal breaker.
I'm not going to move it into this apartment or this condo. And I think at the same time, so I think to a large extent,
Or they give up their car.
or they give up their car, right? So like I think to a large extent, there's lots of self-selection that takes place. I mean, for example, I live in Fells Point, and I purposefully chose to live where I live because I didn't own a car and I didn't want to buy a car. So there's no place for me to park. I live on an alley street. Parking is not convenient for me. It would not be convenient. So somebody who had a car and needed to park a car and use it every day, they likely wouldn't buy the house that I bought. But there are other neighborhoods in which parking, if parking is a priority for individuals, there are market options throughout the city.
Or the
that would support them.
developer says, I know I'm not going to be able to lease these unless I provide parking. And the market would dictate that.
Absolutely, yes.
But it's interesting, Commissioner McCoach, thank you for asking your question, because for some reason in my mind, I thought that this was really just, for like a LIHTC projects, like pure affordable projects. But I go back in and I read the purpose clause. It's for any residential project that has an inclusionary housing component, which is now every residential project. Yeah. So it's basically eliminating parking for any residential development.
Yes, that's above the certain
But eliminating
what the
minimum.
triggers are.
A minimum.
Eliminating the minimum requirement for
Right.
any residential project
Correct.
that has inclusionary housing, and I can't remember what the minimum threshold is for requiring inclusionary housing.
20 units?
Well, Mr. Barry,
So that actually helps the developer of
totally.
affordable housing.
I'm totally cool with it. In my mind, I was going when I read this, I didn't think it was applicable to everything, but it's applicable to everything.
To me,
So
it
thank you
ties
for asking
into
that
the
question.
previous presentation about sustainability, which I thought was the somewhat of the intent.
It's just throwing it back on the market, which is fine. The market's going to dictate what they provide.
Yeah, and I actually don't have a problem at all with that idea. But I think that we have been inclined to kid ourselves that when we say, oh, there's no parking requirement in Baltimore City, that means there will be no parking. And I think, that's kind of one of the underlying assumptions about the Harbor Place project. Oh, we don't require it. Don't worry about it. But in fact, we're going to have a ton of parking at Harbor Place, or we're going to have a ton of parking because all the developers will immediately flip to, well, what's the market say? And we'll provide what the market says, which may or may not be more than what our code required. Could well be less.
And alternatively, every developer of every major project goes before the neighboring communities, and one of the regular questions is how much parking you're providing. And if somebody says 0, good luck.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and again, when we were looking at the Harbor Place presentation, or listening to the Harbor Place presentations, we are thinking in terms of, I will speak for myself, my generation, and I think some of us, and this is not a knock, it's just, I think, a reality, are easily fixed in our way of thinking, whereas I think he may have stepped out. The young man who's a new staff person who was used to living in DC for some period of time, I think is the market
well, he's
that
standing right
ultimately
there.
will be who we're planning for.
He didn't have
who-
a car.
I don't know whether he does or he doesn't, but I'm
Matt
saying
doesn't.
that generation and beyond, this is what the sustainability plan is about. It's about looking forward, obviously working now towards lowering the carbon footprint. I don't know the language, forgive me. I'm getting there. But I see it, and believe me, I worked here going to site plan review where one of the hard lines was, do you have enough parking for any given project? So I come from a mindset where that was very much a part of the planning process. So it's a process for me to get to this, but I see the connection.
Yeah, and yes, I mentioned best practices shifting, and I think over the past 10 years, there's been a really startling, I think in a good way, number of cities and counties, and even some states are toying with ending vehicle parking minimums. There's tons and tons of research showing all of the negative externalities that they cause. So I at the beginning of the pandemic, very briefly, I toured several recently built projects in the city because I was curious what their parking utilization rate was. These massive garages, and I have photos of level after level after level of completely empty parking garage. I mean, tens of millions of dollars. I mean, huge carbon footprint. Simply because, well, and it's a combination of minimums. It's also a combination, as you mentioned, Chair, community demands. And oftentimes the community it's not a representative sample. It's a handful of people who demand there's enough parking, got to have more parking. And so developers and lenders feel like, well, okay, we got to build the parking just because we do. And it's negative from an urban design perspective. It's negative from a traffic perspective. It's negative from a climate resiliency perspective. There's lots of downsides. And so, but fortunately, that sort of the tide is changing and the mindset is shifting, and we're realizing there's way more downsides than upsides of us requiring what oftentimes are arbitrary numbers of vehicle parking
Oh,
spaces.
yeah, the parking counts are designed to accommodate that Christmas shopping rush.
Yeah.
But why don't we just simply create a maximum parking requirement?
The zoning code does have a maximum in, which is double what the minimum requirement is.
But it could be whatever we decided was right for our city, too.
Yes, I think there's
Downtown DC.
there's lots of room for
I mean,
improvement.
Like height limits, I am struggle with designation of no height limit, because I don't understand what that means economically or from a form-based design thing. But so similarly, to say there's no minimum parking requirement just leaves me not knowing kind of, how is it managed, other than to sort of passively accept whatever developers sort of justify?
Well, I mean, they're the ones putting in the millions of dollars to build it. I mean, they're gonna have to figure out whether or not, if they don't have any parking, are they screwing themselves and saying, okay, nobody's gonna rent these apartments? Interestingly enough, what was it, One Light Street, the conversion of the old bank building, 0 parking.
Yeah.
10 Light Street, yes.
10 Light Street, thank you, 10.
But to
One
the
was
point,
across
One
the-
Light Street is one of many buildings that are struggling because of the parking rate, the parking utilization being so low, they're not hitting their target revenue. So
Right.
that's an example of.
But the building right across the street was converted into several hundred apartments with 0 parking.
Right.
That was a bold move, but it worked.
And it worked for them.
I think part of the challenge is oftentimes it's not minimum requirements, it's not community associations, it's the lenders oftentimes
Oh, yeah.
what we find. And
Yeah.
Chairman Davis is well aware of this, working in the field. We'll have meetings, developers are like, I know, I don't want to build this many parking spaces. I totally agree with you guys, planning staff, but I can't get my lending, I can't get my financing unless I've got this arbitrary number of parking spaces. And so that's,
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. DeSantis.
enough hot air about this.
No, it's good, it's good.
Well, and as the generation of lenders changes, that's going to change.
Hopefully so.
We may not be here for it.
Is there any other questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this really critically interesting bill? All right, thank you. We'll close the public hearing. If there's no further discussion, do we have a motion? And we are, obviously, as everybody knows, we're a recommending body on this. Goes back before the city council. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Williams and Vice Chair Stevenson. Mr. Secretary, you call roll.
Robin Allen.
Approve.
Marcia Collins.
Approve.
Philippe Horn. Approve. Claudia Jolin. Approve. Doug Coach.
Approve.
Justin Williams.
Approve.
Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
Sean Davis.
Approved.
And the next item on the agenda is, again, number 13 was postponed, as we announced earlier, minor subdivision final plan for 6300 York Road in the 4th Councilmatic District. Matt DeSantis.
For the record, before you begin, Mr. DeSantis, my company, Morris Ritchie Associates, was involved in this project and this plan. I'm going to recuse myself. If the commission is comfortable with me staying here and running the meeting, great. If you would prefer me to leave, I leave it up to you. Are you cool with me staying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want us to kick you out?
I was thinking about it, but no, I'm
He
okay.
has something else he just assumed.
Just, if I start saying something, say, shut up. All right. Mr. DeSantis.
Moving on. This, next item is a minor subdivision for 6300 York Road up in our northern district. So this is an aerial, does the pointer work? Oh, it does work. So this dashed line is the city-county line, and York Road is running up right through the middle, and the shopping plaza here is, the shopping plaza and some of this wooded area behind is the site. Here, this is zoomed in a little bit more. This shows the property boundaries along Giddings Ave. And there is this forested area in the back, I think. So now, this area, I turned it sideways so that north is to the right, to then shift into the existing conditions plan. So it shows the existing parking lot, existing commercial retail center. This portion of the site has an existing forest conservation easement And then this portion of the site, which is unencumbered by any forest conservation easement, is the subject of the proposed subdivision, which is specifically this, so that would create this line right here, which would then parcel off this site. And here is the final subdivision plat, again, pointing out the existing forest conservation easement, which would stay in place, and it would stay as a part of the commercial center, and this new lot on Giddings Avenue would be created. This application does not include a development plan or any architectural elevations. It is for disposition only. Current property owner is requesting to create the lot so that it can be sold, and then a buyer can prepare a development plan and architectural plans. Those plans would be subject to coming back to the Planning Commission for the Commission's review and approval. So we put a pin in the property in our building permit system. So if somebody, whether it's next year or in 5 years, applies for a building permit for the site, not knowing, it gets flagged and it comes to us so that we can say, oh, this site was subject to subdivision approval without a development plan for the site, has to come back to the commission. The overall site is roughly 3 acres in size. Honestly, I didn't include a map of this, but the site itself, maybe we'll go back to the aerial. The site is already split zoned. So the developed portion of the site, the shopping center, along this line is zone C3. The back side of the site is already zoned R1E, which is consistent with the with the neighborhood around it. The fact that the site is split zone, it sort of implies it was the back half of this was already kind of set up to be subdivided and developed for a single-family home. Actually, let me reach back here. The reason why this application is not a consent agenda item is because there were community questions and objections and a request for this item to be elevated in accordance with the subdivision rules and regulations from the consent agenda to major subdivision track. This application was submitted in early 2023. Public notice was done as required for all subdivision applications. Planning staff received a number of letters of objection and concern and question from community residents. We held an online, a virtual meeting back in, I want to say it was June of last year. This item was, it had been scheduled for as early as like last November. Due to scheduling conflicts with the property owner, we kind of kept bumping it. That's why we're here January 25th. So as I mentioned, there's no development plan that has been submitted. Should one be submitted in the future, it would need to be presented to the Planning Commission before any building permits can be approved. The letters of objection I uploaded onto the Wix site. Sort of the primary concern, and if there's folks from the community, they'll be welcome to come and testify, was, maybe we'll jump back to Ariel. As you can see, there's a good amount of vegetation on the site, and there's concern that any clearing of the site would be detrimental from a buffer perspective from the back of house of the existing commercial operation to folks along Giddings Avenue. The property owner who's present today, participated in that online meeting and has had lots of communication with association leadership and community folks. Lots of conversation about possible buffering that could be done, fencing, border plantings. Property owner had, as far as I'm aware, has been very happy to listen and take into consideration such features. I think there was property owner also, clarified to folks in a very respectful, tactful way that the site, as I mentioned, is zoned R1E. The proposed lot bounds satisfy all zoning requirements. They satisfy all land subdivision rules and regulation requirements. The parcel, if folks in the community were interested in purchasing the land, property owner would be more than happy to sell it to folks in the neighborhood if they'd like to see it stay as it is, undeveloped. Otherwise, its current zoning entitles the development of a single-family detached house. Moving on to equity analysis. In the short term, there would be no impact. As I mentioned, that this current proposal only seeks to create the lot for disposition. Long term, should the lot be developed, the proposed impact from staff's perspective would be very minimal, as the lot would be limited to a single-family detached home, which would be entirely fitting given the existing neighborhood context. Considering impact on Baltimore's existing patterns of inequity, this lot split and potential future development of a detached home would not impact existing patterns of inequity. This neighborhood is one of relative affluence, the kind of which most new housing construction is typically seen in the city. Regarding community engagement, as I mentioned, lots of efforts to engage with neighborhood residents, planning staff along with Councilman Conway's office. As I mentioned, we had a virtual meeting last summer. All of the typical required public notice has taken place. Regarding impact on internal operations, there's not been, nor is there expected to be any substantive impact to internal operations. I could simply note that the only equity impacts for staffing related to this application is the many hours of staff time that have been dedicated to this application, which is much higher burden than staff typically experiences for a lot subdivision such as this. The Bologna Giddings Community Association has been notified of the application. Site has been posted in accordance with commission requirements, and staff is recommending approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeSantis. Questions and comments, starting off with you, Commissioner McCoach.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Allen?
Do you mind showing the slide where the city-county line is?
Absolutely.
Please.
I think it's on. Right.
One more.
Shopping center.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the actually on this one it's the bold black line.
Oh.
It's not the dash line. Or it's the dash line. I mean,
One of those two.
this aerial maybe it's it's one of those two. It doesn't cut through the site.
Two layers are not lining up, that's all.
I see. Okay. And actually, maybe then the existing conditions
No,
plan isn't it?
it was bad.
Sure.
Go back. One more. It's the white dash line.
The white dash.
If you go back to one more,
Wells is half and half.
go back one more. Let me
Yeah.
It's going right through this building. You see where it's going? That building that goes one slide forward. It's going right through that building at the same location. It's the white dash line.
Thank you. I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but I will. Along Schwartz Avenue, those houses that are along there, they are, I don't know if they comprised the entire community, but they are at least part of what had historically been going way back, don't know how long, Black community. And I, based on the little bit that I know, they would not fall into the category that you indicated in the equity analysis. But so few of the houses are inside the city line, I don't know whether it would figure into the equity analysis, but I just want to make that point that when we're looking at that kind of thing and looking into whom to include in the mailings, I hope that we're not leaving out parts of communities that are there, and that should be considered. That's all.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Allen. Vice Chair Stevenson?
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Williams?
I think you said this already, Matt, but the subdivision plan meets the requirements, obviously?
Yes, that's correct.
So,
Commissioner Horn?
No questions.
Commissioner Collins?
So when I originally read the staff report, I misread it because I thought when they were referring to the auto uses, that there was a one-story there, but that's not. They were referring to the overall shopping center, I believe. So there is no structure currently on that area that's to be subdivided, correct?
That is correct.
And it does not interfere with the identified forest conservation area, correct?
That's also correct.
Okay. And so when I read the letters, they were talking about, some of the people were talking about enhancing the barriers between the shopping center and the rest of the community. And I think they were referring to a wall and maybe enhancing the height of the wall and so on. I'm going to be interested to hear the public comments because I couldn't really tell whether people were opposed to this or they just had issues that they were hoping the property owner would address. So I'll just wait to see if we get any information that way. Thank you.
Commissioner Jung?
Yes. Similar to Commissioner Collins, I have a very similar question about the barrier between the property that we're talking about today and the shopping center. Personally, I also live next to a shopping center, so these letters are they reach out to me very deeply. So I would love to know what, if at all, the barrier between that, and if there is one, concerns about that as well. Thank you.
And I can mention, I wish that I'd included street photos, but there's actually a retaining wall
From the other
along the
side.
back of the shopping center. I'm waiting for the cursor to work.
Which-
Did I point at this one?
Just so you know, Vice Chair Stevenson just showed the street level view of the retaining wall along the back of the
Yeah.
retail center.
So there's a retaining wall, here we go, along the back of the shopping center where the new lot line would be located. And so I can say that this was spoken about at length by community members with the property owner, who again, the current owner isn't planning on doing any development himself, but simply wants to make the lot for it to be sold for somebody else to submit development plans, which would have to come back to the planning commission, which the planning so even before the commission, once planning staff receives plans, we could certainly direct applicants to include some sort of fencing, landscape buffer, and the commission could also weigh in on that. And also, I think there's sort of an understanding that just simply from a real estate market perspective, it would likely it's probably not something that the city would need to impose, and so some sort of onerous above and beyond thing. If somebody's building a house there, which likely would sell for a lot of money, given the neighborhood, they would want to put up at least a wooden fence along that side between the back of the shopping center, and also from a buffering perspective, I think there's concern that the removal of any trees to build a house there would negatively impact sort of a buffer between the back of the shopping center and the street. It could be argued that actually having a house there might actually be an even better sound and visual buffer than having some trees, because it's not like a fully forested, thick, site. So I think I would presume that should somebody propose a single-family detached house there, that plus fencing and some landscaping would likely wind up being arguably even more of a buffer than what currently exists.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Thank you very much, Mr. DeSantis. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this agenda item?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Caroline Hecker, Rosenberg, Martin Greenberg, on behalf of the developer. I'm joined by Mark Renbaum, who's a representative of Schwaber Holdings, which is the property owner. Mr. DeSantis did an excellent job in his presentation. I just wanted to come behind him and reiterate a couple of things. First of all, I'm very sorry for the excessive amount of staff time that went into preparing for this. But there has been a ton of community outreach, as Mr. DeSantis indicated. There's been a lot of back and forth with the community. I think, and I don't have access to the Wix page, but I think a lot of the letters that came in earlier before some of the subsequent community meetings had occurred. And we have now really, I think, resolved most of the issues for all of the reasons that Mr. DeSantis just articulated. The construction of a new house on this lot is going to be a significant buffer for the neighborhood, and anybody who buys that house is going to want significant screening from the shopping center. So it's a problem that sort of is going to solve itself. The forest conservation easement isn't being touched. That's staying as part of the shopping center. That forest will remain, and that will, in fact, protect those houses that back up onto Schwartz Avenue that Commissioner Allen referenced. So, I think that this, it's sort of started off maybe on the wrong foot, but it has, through extensive communication with the community, largely been resolved, I think. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Hecker? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Hecker. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, or deliberations from the commission? If not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner. Man, my pen's not ready. Mr. Secretary, will you call roll?
Robin Allen.
Approve.
Marcia Collins.
Approve.
Talib Horn.
Approve.
Claudia Julin.
Approve.
Doug McCoach.
Approve.
Justin Williams.
Approve.
Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
Sean Davis.
Recuse.
The next item on the agenda is the Port Covington Area of Special Sign Control, an amendment in the 11th Councilmanic District. Caitlin Audette will present.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I have to present to you an amendment to the signage plan to the Port Covington. Oh, yes, we need to request
Yeah, so
a waiver.
unfortunately, there was a notice or a posting deficiency for this application. The property was posted, but oddly enough, considering they're looking for really big signs, they posted 8.5 by 11 signs on the property, which is hilarious in and of itself. So, yeah, exactly. So we would need to waive posting. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding waiving the posting requirement for this property, for this application? If not, do we have a motion to waive the posting requirement?
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Williams. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. Mr. Secretary, will you call a roll?
Robin Allen.
Approve.
Marcia Collins.
Reluctantly approve that tiny, tiny sign.
It's cute.
Talib Horn. Approve. Claudia Julin.
Approve.
Doug McCoach.
Approve.
Justin Williams.
Approve.
Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
Sean Davis.
Approve. Now, Ms. Audette, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. So I have today a request for the Port Covington Area Special Sign Control and amendment to the sign plan. My name is Caitlin Audette. The petitioner is Yance Design. The owner is MAG Partners. This is in the South Planning District, which is Jasmine Kimball's district. So just some quick background about ASSCs. In 2018, Title VII of the zoning code was repealed and replaced to create a new method of classification and review of signs. Included in that replacement was the creation of areas of special sign control. This was created to allow commercial areas the ability to depart from the standard signage requirements described in the zoning code to better respond to the unique character. Under the subtitle, the Planning Commission may recommend and the City Council may approve the designation of an area that meets certain criteria as an area of special signage. And then the Planning Commission may then approve a specific signage plan for that area of special signage control. So today, the request is an amendment to a previously approved sign plan. The commission is tasked with making the following findings of facts: that the signage plan would not increase the likelihood of traffic congestion or distraction, would not add to the visual clutter in the area, and would not be incongruous with the existing or contemplated design of the area. And then for the purposes of this review, we define visual clutter as the presence or abundance of signs, poles, mechanical equipment, and other accessory items that are of multiple sizes, types, and colors that are inappropriate for or conflict with the character of the immediate context, which includes but is not limited to architecture, building design, street typology, and surrounding uses. So what might constitute visual clutter in one context may be appropriate in another. And so lastly, for background, these are the requirements for what a sign plan must include. The applicant has provided these and they are available on the Wix site. They are quite extensive, so I have not included them in the presentation today. So the Port Covington area special signage control includes all areas zoned PC, which encompasses much of Port Covington or Baltimore Peninsula, as shown here on the zoning map. In March of 2022, the Planning Commission approved a signage plan for the Port Covington ASSC that included limited portions of the master plan area, it's shown in red. And then subsequently, in March of 2023, an amendment to include signage for the Under Armour campus was reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. The focus of today's amendment will be Block E7. Note that this is a change. Note that the changes to the previously approved E5A that were included in my staff report have been pulled by the applicant. So the review now is only going to be limited to E7. So now I'm going to go through the plans and elevations. This is a single parcel, but there are multiple buildings. This plan is for E7A, B, and C, the kind of the southeast side of the block. The majority of the signs proposed are for ground floor tenant signs, both projecting and wall. These are the purple and green signs. Additionally, awning or canopy signs, the pink ones, are strategically located. And then less evident are the above ground floor wall signs, which are identified in yellow, and above ground floor projecting signs in orange. And finally, there's the maroon sign, which is this lone rooftop sign. It's at the bridge connecting buildings A with B and C. Here's the other half of the block. This is E7D. It's the northwest side of the block. Again, the majority of the signs are ground floor tenant signs, both projecting and wall. There's a single awning or canopy sign proposed and limited areas of above ground floor wall signs. There are no above ground floor projecting signs or roof signs on this portion of the block. So I'll try to go through these fairly quickly. There's a lot of elevations. As you can see, the areas are just basic blocks. They are not specific signs. As tenants are identified, they can put their signs within these blocks. They may not fill the entirety of the areas identified. So you can see the green areas, those are, again, wall signs that are at the ground floor. And then the purple ones are going to be projecting signs. On this elevation, you can see the projecting above ground floor wall sign. There's a single one of those proposed at the corner of Block A, in orange on the upper right-hand side of the screen. Here's the south elevation, shows the rooftop sign at the bridge. That's in the maroon, and that's the bridge connecting E7A with E7B and C. And again, another view of that projecting sign on the upper left-hand side of the screen. And also visible are the location for awning signs. Here is one where they have identified a specific sign. And again, they have some flexibility here. So this is one sign in two locations with the idea that potentially there could be two tenants at a future date. At this time, there's a single tenant who's utilizing this location. Again, here's, you can see the wall signs at the ground floor. Of note is the above ground floor wall sign, which is kind of the area provided is along the roof line. Again, not all of that area would necessarily be a sign. As tenants and signage is designed, it could encompass portions of the proposed area. Okay, again, here's locations for awning signs, above ground floor wall signs, projecting signs. Each storefront will be allowed a projecting sign and a tenant sign. That's at the wall. And some of these signs are going to be very basic, likely for parking, identification, etc. So you can see how the architecture changes on different sides of the block and how the signage is integrated into different aspects of the architecture. Just gonna go through these. I don't really need to repeat myself very much, I don't think. Again, projecting and wall signs for tenants at the ground floor. Okay, so what's the specific request? In this table, you can see the sign types that are identified, the quantity that's allowed per the zoning, the proposed quantity, and the deviation requested. So for wall signs for ground floor, they are requesting 3 additional signs. For wall signs above ground floor, the applicant is requesting 4 additional signs. For projecting signs at the ground floor, the applicant is requesting 2 additional signs. And then for the final signs, there's no deviation requested. The max cumulative area of signs allowed is 1,200 square feet with up to 50% deviation. The proposed square footage of the building signage at the moment is 1,798 square feet, a deviation of roughly 50%. So zoning code requires this interpretation of findings of fact. So staff finds that there will be no adverse traffic impact from the proposed signs. The signs are largely located at the ground floor for specific tenants and do not create visual clutter, and that the design of these signs respond to the architecture of the building and site and maintain a cohesive campus identity. As far as equity, the proposal will allow building users to easily find their way throughout the campus and provide a cohesive identity for the area. The proposal is the next step in a continued community engagement that has occurred since the master planning phase and has continued through implementation. The owner is in communication with neighboring community associations and participates in their broader planning efforts, though there's not currently an existing community association for this immediate area. This will have minimal impact on internal operations, and staff will need to review and approve permits for any signs that are proposed within the signage plan. Notification for this application was given to the South Baltimore Neighborhood Association, South Baltimore Gateway Partnership, and other interested parties within the South Baltimore community. In addition, the site was posted, though the postings were smaller than required, thus the waiver requested. So staff recommends that the commission approve and adopt the findings of fact that the amendment to the proposed signage plan will not increase the likelihood of traffic congestion or distraction, add to the visual clutter in the area, and be incongruous with the existing or contemplated design of the area. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Audette. It's a cumbersome process because, in a building like that, there's a ton of little signs, and I get it, but it's obviously something we have to go through as part of the area special sign control. So with that, are there any questions, Commissioner Jolene?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Collins?
Could you go back quickly just to the summary chart that showed the number of signs? So when we talk about up to a 50% deviation, we're saying in this plan it has 50% deviation. We're also including the signs, the projecting signs, they could have 4, they're only having 1. So all the areas saying none, I'm assuming that 50% deviation would be as if those 3 categories were fully meeting their maximums, correct?
So the specific deviation is actually just for the maximum cumulative area portion of the signage review. So there's two parts of sign review. One is for the specific signs. So you have, say in a PC 2 zoning district, you're allowed above ground or ground floor wall signs, 1 per tenant, 2 if they're a corner tenant, 1 for each street frontage. That's a very typical requirement for that. But then on top of that, there's a max cumulative area of signs. So with for any specific parcel, they cannot have total amount of signs that's above a certain square footage. In this case, it's 1,200 square feet, and the deviation here is for that specific calculation. So they are requesting a deviation of 50% for that max cumulative area of signage, which they are basically meeting with the proposed signage plan. Does that make sense?
I'm going to ask my question again.
Okay.
On the proposed quantity, we have the bottom 3 listed as being, they're not requesting a deviation because they're under signing those particular areas. They could have 4, they only have
Yes.
1. So I'm saying, is the deviation calculated as if they fulfill their desired quantity allowed by zoning? In other words, if they just go ahead with the 3 for a projecting sign, 1 more on the awning canopy, and 1 more on rooftop, does that change the percentage here, or is this assuming that they would fulfill?
I don't think I understand your question.
All right, so let me see if I can ask it in a different way. Tell me if I'm wrong. They're proposing a total of 34, 40, 73, 74, 81, 82 signs. There's a total of 82 signs in proposed quantity, right? Of that, 9 of them are above and beyond what they're permitted to do. Is the 1,200 square feet for the 81? It's for the 9.
1,200 has nothing to do with those specific numbers. The 1,200 is based off of the max cumulative area of the signs total. So it
Okay,
is,
so the 81 signs total 1,798 square feet.
That's exactly.
Which is a 50% deviation.
Yep.
Does that help you out? 81 signs.
Well, I'm just saying, my question is rooting it in, okay, we approve this, let's say, and then they come back and they say, you know what, we want to put 3 more projecting signs, we're allowed that, and we
they
want
can't.
1 more.
Because they have to meet both requirements at the same time. So they have to meet the max cumulative area sign as well as the signage type requirement. So right now, yes, they could potentially have additional projecting signs above the ground floor, right? But they have no more square footage allotted within their max cumulative area. So
They'd have to delete other signs.
They would have to delete other signs.
Okay,
Or come back, no, because 50% is the max that they're allowed.
So they'd have to come back and say, okay, we're not going to do 34 ground mounted wall signs on the ground floor.
That was
We're
my
going to do
question.
20.
That was my question.
Sorry about that, thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Horn.
No questions.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
Does this cover now with the additional area, the full Baltimore Peninsula?
This is just building E7.
Right, but now that it's included, does the area
No.
of special sign control?
There will likely be other amendments. So this max cumulative area thing is just for this parcel. As other parcels come online, we will see more amendments to the Port Covington area special sign control. Let me go back to my map, sorry.
Not too far.
So it's for all of the area zone PC. So right now, we've done Under Armour campus. We've done portions of PC2 and PC1, but not all of PC2. And we have not done anything with PC3, which has not, no development is occurring over there at the moment. So yes, there will likely be further amendments to this signage plan.
Well, just like the chair with the parking requirement issue, I trust the market to resolve the signage issue. So just me personally, I feel like the time you spent just in this project, which must have been a lot of staff time. And so for the representatives from the developer here, but I'd be open to giving more latitude to the development team here to do whatever they want with signage. So maybe I'll save everybody some headaches in the future. That's just me.
Okay. Vice Chair Stevenson, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
No questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Commissioner McCoach.
No questions.
My only question is, did you spend more time on this, or did Matt spend more time on that subdivision? I'm just
Matt
kidding.
definitely spent more time on this. This was,
She works faster.
All right. Man, I opened up a can of worms there. All right, hearing none. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Do I have any deliberations from the commission? If not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoach. Second, Deputy Mayor Williams, Mr. Secretary.
Do we have to adopt the findings of facts? According to this record?
Yeah, I mean, I
Okay,
think
so we're doing it all at once.
motion to approve, which would include the findings of facts as that stipulated in the staff report.
Robin Allen,
approve.
Marcia Collins,
Approved.
Tully Porn,
Approve.
Claudia Jolin.
Approved.
Doug McCoach.
Approved.
Justin Williams. Eric Stevenson.
Approved.
John Davis.
Approved.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is City Council Bill Number 23-0470, a conditional use zoning conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to 4 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district with variances at 704 North Gilmore Street and the 9th District. Eric Tiso will present.
Good afternoon. This is a request for a conversion of 4 units. So this is the map showing the property. That's the third one in from the corner. And the funeral home is right behind it. So there's a couple of aerials showing it there as we run around the different sides, noting the funeral home behind it. And where you see this driveway there where the black car is parked, that's actually planning unit development. There's no alleyway there. That's a sidewalk that you see in concrete there. So the rear is landlocked. For the use analysis, and I'll apologize now if I confuse anybody. I picked this one up from Martin as he started it. And I was looking through the history of it. In 2015, there was an ordinance that was approved to convert this building to 3 units by a prior owner. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. They didn't get the use and occupancy permit. Later, it was applied to the BMZA. They couldn't do it because the conversion requires an ordinance. There's a letter in the file that went to the BMZA at that time for 3 units. So my brain stuck on 3 units. And I initially did the analysis and I had to redo it. So if you read it before and are confused, it's me, not you. So that's a little bit about the history. So for the zoning requirements, multifamily dwellings require 750 square feet of lot area each. For 4 units, it's 2,625. When you're 3 or more, half of a lot area rounds up. So that's why it's 3.5 times that 750 number. If it was 3 units, it would be like a 4% variance for a lot area. Once you add the extra one, because the lot is only 1,710 square feet, that jumps it up to nearly a 35% lot area variance. Now, while that may seem to be a large variance by percentage, what's happening here is we have a ratio problem of the size of the structure at 17 by 70 times 3 floors. We have an interior space, not counting any basement space, of 3,570 square feet. That's 50% larger than my suburban single-family detached house, just for reference. So it
How
clearly
many
meets
families live in your house?
just the one in mine.
Okay.
But by relative size for an attached structure, this is a big structure on a relatively smaller lot in comparison. So proposed are 4 one-bedroom units. 750 square feet of interior floor area is required for each. The interior space available well exceeds that and would average almost 900 square feet per unit. For parking, 1 space per unit is required. None can be provided because it's a landlocked lot. There's just no way to meet that requirement. And the parking variance is included in this bill as drafted. Staff believes that it's reasonable to grant these variances to get the building renovated and back in active use, and recommend that you adopt the findings necessary and approve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tiso. There were also, if I remember correctly, some letters of support.
The letter of support that you saw in there was addressed to the BMZA in the prior action when it was for 3 units for what it may be worth. It was not specifically for this.
I'd like to clarify, Mr. Chair, because the letter that I read was not strictly in support.
Good.
Well, it's just,
No, I'm not gonna, my comment was, the letter that was submitted to this was for 3 units, and the question was, well, do they support 4 units? I have no idea.
It was for a different action. I did not have the opportunity to check on that. It was included with the bill file. I'm not sure what the councilman's intent was there, but it was part of the bill file.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, it specifically says 3 dwelling units, and I'm like,
Yeah, it was from a prior action, so technically it's neither here nor there, but it was part of the bill file.
okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Tiso, starting with Commissioner McCoach,
I have no questions.
Commissioner Allen,
Nor do I, thank you.
Vice Chair Stevenson.
I've got a few, Mr. Tiso. I can say from knowledge with the community that they don't support 4 units. 3 units was a compromise that was the most that the community was willing to support. The developer had asked for 4 units. So the community supports 3 units. It was previously approved for 3 units. The lot area within 4% lines up with 3 units. The square footage, interior gross square footage numbers that you referenced include the basement, also include the stairwells, which would become common spaces, because when you break a single-family house into 4 apartments, you have a lot of space that becomes access. So those numbers are slightly skewed.
Well, to be fair, it was just for the 3 floors. That was the calculation. 17 by 70 by 3 is how I arrived at that number, not including basement. That's how I got there. But you're correct on the shared space coming out of that.
I thought that I read in your staff report that you needed to include the basement
No,
to meet the
in
4
the
units.
code, did I cite it? Third line of the upper bullet there, it says the minimum requirement for conversion to be eligible to apply in the first place, the structure has to contain 1,500 square feet, not counting the basement.
Bless you.
And his math was right. 17 times 70 times 3 is,
But that is a gross figure, so to be fair,
No.
is
Yep.
correct. The
Totally-
common
totally
shared
legitimate.
spaces
A
would
common-
come out of that.
yep.
Okay, the only other really important concern I want to raise on behalf of the community, you touch on the equity analysis, and it also refers to the Harlem Park Urban Renewal Plan, which of course is ancient, and hopefully there's going to be a new one soon. But the current one from 1960, the goals were to eliminate substandard housing, and to the extent that that was well-intentioned, it resulted in a lot of, slum clearance and things like that. But, to this day, the neighborhood is working really hard to, balance density, affordability and market rate, 1-bedroom apartments and housing to support families. And, we continue to see an oversaturation of these, what were once historic houses being chopped up into apartments. And so, again, the community is willing to compromise up to 3 units. But my point here is they specifically cite the concern about trash. And this is a real like rubber meets the road issue for people, for all of us who live in these communities. The city will not pick up that much trash. They won't, even for large families that surpass what fits in the green trash can, it's a problem. And for multi-unit developers and owners are supposed to provide private trash pickup, and they don't. So this doesn't work, and that's why the community is so you know, strict about their preference for 2 and their compromise for 3, but their, you know, real exception on 4 or more units. So I would just like to offer that as a tangible thing. I mean, we see plenty of examples of, you know, community folks objecting to things, and sometimes we have to, you know, make the decision for the greater good. But in this case, until we can provide a solution for the trash, I think that we should just follow the code and not approve variances that exacerbate that situation. And I'll just add that BMZA, while they deferred this to us, their memo was negative.
And the commission always can recommend an alternative of 3 units, and given the fact that they already approved it in 2015, the relevant bulk standards from the prior code to this one haven't changed, so they should be able to make a finding to support that fairly simply, if that's what the planning commission would prefer.
No, I mean, okay, we've got to go through the process real quick. I'm sorry.
Okay, so thank you for that response, I guess. That's all, thank you.
Yeah, let's go through everybody. Thank you. Let's go through the commission, see if there's anybody here. I think as Mr. Tisa says, you are more than welcome to introduce a motion that would deviate from, you know, the application. This is a city council bill. We are a recommending body, not the final approval body, but I think it would be very good to send the city council, you know, our collective thoughts on it. So with that, Deputy Mayor Williams,
What report are you referencing on this? That was negative?
the BMZA.
I was trying to look.
Zoning administrator memo,
Like, so bad from Becky Witter from the planning's comment.
Jeffrey Veal, zoning administrator.
Oh,
That's a procedural referral,
yeah.
Okay.
because they can't approve it over the counter, that's why it had to be referred to the council by way of ordinance.
Yeah, BMZA bumped this to the council, right?
So
That's right.
I misspoke. I was
believe the
referring to,
BMZA's report deferred to us because since they typically don't take a position on this category of things. They were
Yeah, it says the
unable-
BMZA was not able to approve the request conversion as this property is located in an R8 zone and so requires this conditional use conversion bill.
Right, so that's why they denied the BMZA appeal, because it was the incorrect location. It needed to go by a conditional use ordinance instead.
Yep.
So
But
it's procedural disapproval.
You see, it's the bottom of page 1 on the staff report. It says under analysis, it's the first.
Yeah, I didn't see that in BMZ's letter.
Right, that's not the BMZA's letter, that's the zoning,
Oh, sorry.
or that's the zoning office, different from the BMZA.
how could I get confused?
Only in Baltimore
They both
are
say zoning.
BMZA, zoning, and planning, 3 separate agencies. But yes.
That's the other question, not that, I mean, we're already.
All right,
on
so
the-
real quickly, any other questions?
No.
Okay. Deputy Mayor
Yeah,
Williams.
we're already, I mean, it's already on this path is irrelevant, but looking at the zoning cards, looks like there was a UNO issued for it to be 2 dwelling units in the 60s. So.
It was approved for 3 dwelling units in 2015.
They just never, it was a
Right,
just
prior-
never-
right, but there was a prior, certificate of occupancy issued, well, it doesn't matter, it's in the 60s, but anyway, the question on the trash part, I didn't know that either. Is it only 1 can per parcel, or is it by unit?
Per parcel.
per parcel is like 92 cubic feet or something to that effect is the
96,
maximum
right,
amount.
I mean, that seems like the other option, or I mean, I guess in theory, I don't know if the applicants here, I mean, a condition on the rezoning that we probably can't impose ourselves, but could be put in on their own accord to agree to either have commercial pickup and/or have 396.
This
So
this
they-
is an existing requirement, and if code enforcement would enforce it, maybe residents wouldn't feel that they needed to, that this was the only, you know, protection that they have to keep their communities clean.
Well, I'm saying, well,
Like,
but
it's
I guess
already the
even
rule.
enforcement, I suspect is challenging on proving it in the vacuum, but with a specific requirement. that
But
would
so,
work.
so we approve we approve 4 with a condition that there's private trash pickup. Applicant says, great, thank you very much.
Right, but-
Applicant turns around, but, builds 4 units, occupies them and says, the hell with that. I'm putting a 96-gallon trash can out back and thank you very much. And, it doesn't work. Then it becomes an enforcement issue, which I think Vice Chair Stevenson's saying there is no enforcement in the neighborhood, which has created the problem. So we're right back to square one.
Yeah, I acknowledge the issue. I'm thinking, and I'm talking out loud, but thinking that if there were a bright line condition like have commercial pickup or not, then there would be a quicker, easier test to say that they don't, therefore it's a violation. Whereas now it's in the field, it's like, are they doing it? We can't tell. We don't see trash. Or we could come out a week later and see if there's trash there and enforce the can being picked up or not. So
There may be some value in clearly specifying that as a condition because sanitation enforcement is a different thing than zoning enforcement, right? So this is a conditional use. You can attach conditions on performance. So if you attach that must be a private carrier and it doesn't happen and zoning enforcement gets involved, then there's things that can happen there. So there may be value in listing that as a specific condition.
Even as a 3-unit building, in theory.
In any case.
Right.
Any other questions?
That's all. Yeah.
Questions, Commissioner Horn?
Only question I had is the letter we received from the community was November 6th. Well, the copy of the letter that was sent to the municipal zoning appeals. I just didn't know if there were any subsequent conversations regarding the applicants willing to do 3 units. Or is this the most up-to-date sort of stance between both parties? And I didn't know if anybody here could just kind of update us on that.
Unfortunately, I don't have
That's all.
any input on that because, as I said, when I first was running this, my brain stuck on 3 and I just recently realized my mistake.
Real quickly, is
so-
there anybody here wants to speak on this application? Is the property owner here? Is the applicant here? Okay, that kind of tells us something.
Yeah,
I can't speak for the applicant. I can say that that's a current representation of the community's position.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
no,
wanted-
my last question is sometimes in these type of issues, we do hear from the city council representative, Bullock, and I didn't see a letter or him here. So I just didn't know where he stood as well, in terms of getting the parties together.
Yeah. Commissioner Collins.
I just wanted to clarify, when I said 1 can, I meant 96 gallons, so the municipal trash cans that we distribute are 64 gallons, so you could be entitled to put out another 32 gallon and still be correct. But I don't know how that works out per person in a 4-unit. It's challenging, and I know I've had a lot of conversations with people about, I explained that the code says the landlord must provide sufficient capacity to manage the trash that's generated by his or her building, which is not helpful to a lot of community people when they see trash all piled up in the back. And a lot of buildings, when our trucks go by, they can't necessarily tell if there's 3 units in there or 1. They could take a guess by the trash, but it's, so it is a concern and a valid one. It's something we should consider. That was it.
Commissioner Jones.
A question on, given that this building has been vacant for over 10 years, I think that is pretty notable to me. Hear your concerns for the community. I would also have very similar concerns in my own community. But is there a, if not for, then will remain vacant argument here? If we say and go back to the developer, 3 units only, will they say, see you later? And I think that is a legitimate concern I would have as well on the other side of it, given the vacancy issue we have in the city.
I mean, I don't know, unfortunately, the applicant's not here, which
Right.
tells me a hell of a lot, quite
All I can
frankly.
say is looking at the SDAT history, because, I was curious too. There was a non-arm's length transfer in 2019, or then a 2020 sale, and then this property was purchased in late 2023 by the current owner. It doesn't go back any further than that. So there's been some turnover, but
I could say, Commissioner Jolin, that's a very logical thought, but what we've found that to be a false choice, as evidenced by some of the successful single-family and duplex conversions that we've seen in this very neighborhood. For years, the community has been told that, oh, these houses are too big, there's no demand, it's too expensive, without any real numbers to back that up, just sort of generalizations. And while we have seen successful single-family conversions and two-unit conversions for, in-law suite or revenue producing, we've also seen plenty of instances where the 4 units do get approved, or 5 units even are approved against the community's wishes, and you still sometimes have the problem where it doesn't come to realization. So, and on this block specifically, it's an entire block of very large, entirely vacant houses. It's also directly across the street from Harlem Park, the park, and Harlem Park Elementary, Middle, and Augusta Fells Savage High School. Yep. So it's a travesty and something that needs to be addressed, and it's maybe a bigger solution than this one multi-unit conversion.
I don't have any questions for you. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. I think.
I have a
Kidding
question.
me, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry? Wait a second.
I don't have a
Oh, I'm sorry.
question.
You know what? I stopped at you. I'm sorry,
It's like the
Commissioner
second or
Allen.
third time, that's okay. I know I'm small. And I have trouble expressing myself sometimes, so I'm going to try to make this succinct. But I just wanted to express thanks to Vice Chair Stevenson for bringing that up and reminding me, because that's far from the first or second or third time that he has expressed that kind of concern for the community. He and I actually had a sidebar conversation. I don't know that he would remember, but back early on in the discussion, pre-discussion even, about division of single-family dwellings and the early conversation about zoning changes for being able to split up dwelling units. I don't want to go into all the detail, but he actually said very simply, it's easy to apply protections in some neighborhoods that's been applied over generations. Other neighborhoods have been kind of left out in the open. I'm paraphrasing badly, but it has kept me thinking since he expressed that, and this reminded me of that. And for that reason, I can't support the 4 units. And I'm familiar with this entire area. I've grown up going to church very close to there. I feel very deeply about what you have expressed, not just today, but before. So that's it. I just felt. I
No,
had to
thank
say
you.
something.
Did I miss any, Doug, did I get you?
No, but no comment for the record.
Okay. Now, Secretary Ryer, you were going to say something. before
Well,
screwed up the
I
entire
was
process.
going to sort of protect the integrity of this process, if we change our recommendation to 3 units, I would suggest Eric recuse himself.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine. I think the value of being, because he's actively involved in the Harlem Park community. I don't agree with the Secretary's position personally. I mean, I think that's a value that's added in this. Listen, guys, we are a recommending body in this. It's going to go back before the council. If we have said 3 and the council person and the property applicant, comes back in and says, wait a second, 3 is a dead deal for me, then it's like, okay, go back to we'll defer there's other things that are going to happen after our recommendation. So that, I mean, my position, my own personal position is that, I would support the community. And when I saw the community letter say 3, I was like, why would we approve 4? They're saying 3. Yeah. So, I mean, my recommendation, I'll make a motion I would move that we approve the conversion, that we adopt the findings of facts. However, we disagree that because of the discrepancies with the community letter that was supported, that we can only support a total of 3 dwelling units on this property. So that was a motion.
I would second that.
All right. I actually get to show up as somebody who made a motion, and I'm so excited.
Robin Allen.
Approve
Marcia
as
Collins?
presented.
Approve as presented.
Talib Horn.
Approved.
Claudia Jolin.
Approve.
Doug McCoach.
Approve as modified.
Justin Williams.
Approved.
Eric Stevenson.
Abstain.
And Sean Davis.
Approved. Now I think it's beholden on the council person to figure out what the hell they want to do.
I would see, I mean, I don't know if we have the capacity of this planning staff bandwidth to look into the issue more broadly, because I do think I mean, the real rubber hits the road issue is the trash, not even the
That's
number
not
of
the only
families.
issue, though.
Well, I know, but this is what they call it in the letter, like, and it seems like, but for the trash issue, people would be fine with a little more density here, at least in
believe
this
that.
specific instance. Or they'd rather have fewer, but agree to 3, despite the trash issue. So I think that's something we should look in, that could be solvable from the planning side, or either have a condition on to have better enforcement on the commercial trash pickup, or looking at the rules and the DPW restrictions and see if there's a way to have a better, more sensible policy that's aligned with what we're trying to do. So if we have a planning staff, so I don't know if we have a planning staff person to do that, but.
So, I hate to do this, but now that we've voted to say we can support 3 units, not 4, do they have any problems with their square footage? Since you went through the whole.
It actually improves things, so it's a lower variance. And in fact, because the council had approved 3 units before and the relevant bulk standards haven't changed, it should be very simple for them to find the same stuff. So there's no problem with that.
So we still need a variance for the lot
Lot area and parking.
and the parking.
Okay,
So those,
thank you.
if we adopted the findings of fact in the staff report, but said because of the community engagement or the community input letter, that we could only approve 3, then we're covered. In my opinion, we're covered both
Okay,
ways.
thank you.
Next agenda item.
Okay, next agenda item.
Agenda item.
Got 2 more. Major subdivision final plans for 3309 Chelsea Avenue in the 2nd Councilmanic District. Matt DeSantis will present.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Matt DeSantis, Planning Department. So let me go, so way back in the beginning.
No, real quick. No, real quick.
This is a major subdivision request at 3309 Chesley Avenue up in our Northeast Planning District. Carmen Morrison is our community planner. Here is an aerial, just for context, the yellow slanted line that is Northern Parkway. Bit of background, back in 2019, a similar subdivision application was submitted, reviewed by the city, but that application expired. The former developer failed to pursue and submit final plans. So this commission never saw those plans, but just for background, this is now the second proposed development for the site over the past couple of years. So zooming in a little bit more on the site, you can see it's a very large through lot. It's got frontage on Chesley Ave to the north and Woodring Avenue to the south. Parcel is about 85 feet wide by 366 feet deep. So it's about 0.7 acres. And it's located in the North Hartford Road neighborhood. Zoom in. So this is a view. This is from Chesley Ave, looking into the site, and this is from the other side, from Woodring. See that based off the street view and the aerials, the existing pattern of development. I'll jump back. The neighborhood is a mix of single-family detached and semi-detached homes, 2 stories, brick fronts. So here's the existing conditions plan, again, showing the the lot, which is mostly undeveloped. There is a vacant, what used to be a vacant single-family detached house in the middle of the property, which will be demolished. Here is the proposed subdivision plan. Splitting the lot into a total of six lots, so both on Woodring and on Chesley, there'll be a semi-detached and then a detached. 6 lots total. So, sorry for the wonkiness of this image. I wanted to spin it so that it was the same orientation. This is the development plan, which is a little bit hard to read, but you can see. So here it is. So semi-detached. So the 2 semi-detached homes here, and then a detached, and then the mirror image on the other side. 2 semi-detached and a detached. I think so. The Forest Conservation Plan shows it a little bit more clear. And I think I included. So I prepared this colorized site plan for community members just to make it a little bit more clear. The green is existing / proposed pervious area. The orange is the building footprints, and then the yellow are the driveways. I can point out that the proposed semi-detached units would have parking pads along the sides, and the 2 detached homes would have front-loading garages. Okay, I can also note here on this slide that a couple things. Site plan review was conducted for the proposal, not at the committee level, but at the staff level, since the proposal includes just 6 curb cuts for driveways. The landscaping plan and the site is subject to forest conservation and landscape manual requirements. I can jump back to this plan. Plans have been submitted to the Baltimore City Natural Resources Permit System and have been found to be in compliance with the program requirements. Plan includes 6 new canopy trees, 6 understory trees, 24 shrubs, and a total of 45.5 inches of mitigation is required for the removal of 2 specimen trees, which will be satisfied through a fee of $13,650. Regarding zoning regulations, variances for minimum lot width and interior side yard setbacks were granted by the BMZA. Planning staff has had no objections to the variances and has no objections to this development plan, which includes these variances. As sort of jumping back to the overall context, as the proposed development plan is very much consistent with the existing built environment and pattern of development in the neighborhood. I think I've got here. So the architectural elevations. Since the drafting of the staff report, I can note that one of the objections that planning staff and the developer heard from community members was regarding the proposed design. They have since revised their elevations, and so both the semi-detached, as shown here, and the detached with garage now feature entirely brick front facades, whereas in the past it was part brick at the lower levels and then vinyl in the front. That's been changed, so now it's all brick, which is it's an improvement. It will better match the existing brick character of the neighborhood. So that's I think can be represented as a design review / community input win. There were a number of community objections. I'll go through sort of a brief timeline. This application was originally scheduled for the December 21st hearing. Planning staff received a large number of letters with community objections. And at that time, specifically, that the applicant hadn't adequately discussed the project with community members. So, planning staff made the planning department made the decision to pull it off that agenda. There was a community meeting held December 16th by the development team, community members, and our community planner, Carmen Morrison, who's here present. And then additionally, in response to all of the letters that I received, I sort of I compiled and organized the objections and prepared that FAQ, which I included in your backup. I shared that with community members and November 22nd, in attempt to respond to those comments. And since some folks sent individual letters, I compiled this one thing and then sent it out to everybody who had sent in letters to hopefully try and get everybody the same information on the same page. Unfortunately, many of the objections that community members have, they're, while certainly understandable, they are to aspects of the site which are permitted and compliant by city zoning and land development regulations. Moving into the equity analysis, so for short and long-term impact, the construction of these 6 new, it says infill row homes, it should be, again, 4 semi-detached, 2 detached, but 6 new homes will likely have the short-term negative impacts that are associated with any construction projects. You know, it's a pain when people are building stuff on your street and there's noise and there's trucks and stuff. Long-term impacts, however, staff doesn't anticipate significant long-term impacts as the proposed development is in scale and proportion with the existing neighborhood residential development. Regarding impact on Baltimore's existing patterns of inequity, as most new construction in the city tends to agglomerate in more upmarket neighborhoods, this proposed development staff finds is a positive step towards meeting the city's middle neighborhood strategy, as it will provide new market rate missing middle housing in the stable and lovely North Hartford Road community. Community engagement, as I mentioned, there sort of was all of the land subdivision public notice requirements have been satisfied. There was a little bit of a lack of intentional engagement between development team and community members, which fortunately staff feels has been accommodated or satisfied. Not that all community objections have been accommodated, but by this point in time, there has been substantial community engagement. And regarding impact on internal operations, there has not been nor is expected to be any substantive impacts. The North Hartford Road Community Association was notified, and the site has been posted in accordance with commission guidelines. I'm happy to answer any questions. There are representatives of the development team here if there's any questions that I can't answer. And staff is recommending approval.
No questions. Very clear presentation. Thank you.
Vice Chair Stevens.
No questions, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
Do we require sewer capacity letter for single-family home development or this size of development?
Typically, when there's an increase for larger projects, that would be required, I would imagine, given the size of the scope. And I'm looking at the engineer in the back. Do you guys need to do? I think we already had received the approval. Okay, so yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I know, I'm assuming they approved it. I don't know if we did like the real testing, because I know in some part, like Southeast Baltimore, I told every client, we need to check and do the full capacity test. I'm not sure if it happens as a matter of course here, not that it necessarily needs to, but one of the letters raised concerns about sewage backups in their own homes, but I'm not sure if that is impacted by 6 units or not. So that's why I'm asking the question.
I do know, just repeating what I hear frequently from our friends in the stormwater management group in DPW, that depends on where you are in the city. There's some siltation of lines or just capacity issues, which is why they ask for that modeling, but it's modeling is what I understand they do, but it is looked at.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I can add how applicant has submitted plans through the city's BCNR, Baltimore City Natural Resources Permit System, which means it's being reviewed by folks here in planning for forest conservation, landscape manual plans, and by DPW staff for stormwater management requirements, erosion sediment control, and
sewage is the one.
and sewage and water service.
And the reason why we need a third permit system in our lives is because especially the stormwater folks realize that they needed to see things sooner than a building permit.
Right.
So that's why they go first through the BCNR system. We see it later through HCD's building permit system, and then there's the curb cut process and the third permit system for the driveway and curb cut piece.
Right, well, don't need to belabor this, but I was thinking, I don't even know, I should probably know this, if Kim Grove and stormwater management people are thinking about the sewage impact or just thinking about stormwater ESD versus.
Yes, both.
Okay.
She's thinking about sanitary sewer?
Well, not Kim herself, but DPW generally.
Part as part of that process.
That's what the capacity
BCNR.
study is for, yes.
Typically, that issue comes up when they're converting industrial to residential,
Right,
right?
I was thinking even like all the stuff I worked on in Grosse Pointe had obviously issues.
Right. I got an old warehouse that now is converting to 200 apartments.
Right.
That's a very different sewer flow. I
Right.
mean, the reality of this one is you got 3 homes on one road, you got 3 homes on another road. They're not probably going into the same sewer line. They're going into different sewer lines. Obviously, they all end up in probably the same place, but it's a different thing. So, and I don't think we have the capacity to deny.
Yeah, I agree, that's, yeah, and I
so-
think we're lucky, I mean, I'm sure the councilman would prefer even more density here, but.
Yeah. All right. Commissioner Warren,
No questions.
Commissioner Collins?
We have denied capacity in some situations, but it would be rare to do that with a three-house, single-family.
You can
dwelling.
deny capacity as the Department of Public Works.
Yes.
Right. I mean,
Correct.
but that's.
We do have, in fact, we ran into that with the several, including Port Covington, about the capacity of our system. So, I mean, at this point in the consent decree process, we know where a lot of problems are, and we would look at maintenance as well. I had a question about, can you go to the green and yellow and orange slide? Okay, so obviously, these houses are fronting on 2 streets, and the yards are
Really deep.
really deep. So is part of the landscaping plan recognizing that there'll be some trees significantly existing trees far away from where the construction is occurring, that they can stay in place? Or is this all new, trees are going and we're putting in all new?
Yeah, some of these trees that are close to the proposed footprints will be removed. So which maybe isn't clear on this plan. I think on the forest conservation plan specifies, and it's probably hard to read here on the screens, but it calls out how certain trees, like I believe it says to be removed. And well,
That one's to be removed. The one down here is to be removed. So, real quick.
yeah.
This says to be removed. This says to be removed. This says to remain. To remain. And then existing to remain. So, yeah.
And the dash line in the middle.
From there?
I mentioned the vacant home, which is to be demolished.
Yep.
And so it says use of heavy equipment to be limited to this specific area. To to protect the critical root zones of those trees. I can note, one of the earlier development plans actually proposed cutting down a bunch more trees to build a stormwater management facility, which planning, Director Ryer actually specifically said, wait a second, this seems silly to gonna cut down trees to build stormwater management. Fortunately, our sustainability office folks worked with DPW folks to make sure that forest conservation program requirements and goals and DPW stormwater management were both being satisfied.
So where is the stormwater management going?
I'll defer to the project engineer for the specifics. But it also was less than ideal because the proposed facility would have been in the middle of the site with an access easement. But then there's issues with years down the road getting back to it and maintenance and stuff.
Okay, so thank you for answering that question. So basically, we found a way to do it. And keep the trees in place. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner John?
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions. Thanks. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this matter? Go ahead. Come on up, Al. Hopefully you can tell us where the stormwater management facilities are, so.
We can talk about that as well. Al Barry, be associates with the development team. We do have the civil engineer here, can talk about whatever questions you might want answered. But this goes back, as the staff says, several years when there was a community engagement process that led to a zoning board approval. One of the interesting aspects, and I recommend this, I believed at the time, the zoning code, the community objections in many cases said, why can't you build three houses, right? Three attached houses rather than two semi-detached and detached. The zoning code does not allow row houses in this district. Maybe it should, maybe there ought to be a provision for it. If that had been done, this is well under the density that's required, but if it had been done, it would have had more of a setback to the houses on either side. But the zoning code doesn't allow it, so we were ready to do it at the time. The developer at the time then backed out because of COVID, and now we have a new team. So that's the only thing I suggest that maybe that staff look at, maybe that in that zone, whether or not there could be a provision through a conditional use or something, that row houses be allowed.
Are you serious? We've been here for 6 hours and 15 minutes and you're gonna bring a zoning? No, I'm just kidding. No, anything else?
We did listen, we had a very good meeting with a lot of the neighbors in December, it was a Saturday before Christmas. And we did change the elevations, as staff recommended, the community recommended. The neighborhood's a mixture, frankly. Say it's predominantly brick, but there are many wood siding and aluminum siding houses, so the brick is clearly an improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate Mr. DeSantis's frequently asked questions that you included and you sent out to everybody. I thought it was, again, put in those extra hours. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. All right. There was a question regarding stormwater management. Do you need to have that addressed, Ms. Collins?
No, that's okay.
I mean, we're literally just the subdivision. Unfortunately, it has to go through, and I'm sure, Kim's group, Surface Water Divisions, had their bite at the apple. So, all right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. All right. Any questions, comments, deliberations? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevenson. Oh, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Stevenson. Second? Don't all speak up at once.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. Mr. Secretary, you call the roll.
Robin Allen.
Approve.
Marsha Collins.
Approve.
Talib Horn.
Approve.
Claudia Jolin.
Approve.
Doug McCoach.
Approve.
Justin Williams.
Approve.
Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
Sean Davis.
Approved.
Final
Well,
item.
that's the agenda item.
Final item on the agenda tonight is City Council Bill Number 23-0431, zoning retail small box discount establishments. A citywide bill, and Eric Tiso will present.
I apologize, this is going to take a minute.
Is it legal?
I had a quick conversation, yeah, I guess if you want to jump to that. Law Department has some concerns, and I do too. So by way of background to this, in in 2022, but the 23 legislative session, there was a state law change to Section 10 of the land use article, which is the part of state law that enables us to do zoning. It differs depending on which county you're in. Baltimore City is in its own section. And it was an attempt to do something to solve the problem with dollar stores. The state law change did not actually do anything. It just said that Baltimore City may adopt rules according to what you see here and continued here. But it didn't actually do anything, but it led some constituents to be very concerned, and we heard from them when they said, why aren't you applying this? And we said, well, because the state law just said that we can do things that we already can do, but it didn't actually change anything. It has to be a local change to our zoning code to make something actually happen. So duly, Vice President Middleton, and I think she might have had some co-signers, put out a bill to do largely this. The bill would do a few things. It would create a new land use category definition, retail small box discount establishment. We're talking about dollar stores. It would add some then criteria in that definition to try and target the specific businesses of concern and exclude those that are not meant to be caught. So we've got a floor area between 5,000 and 12,000. The typical dollar store is somewhere around 7,500 square feet. Majority of goods of variety of convenience shopping goods and consumer shopping goods, which is undefined, but not to exceed $5. That all of these things, I mean, that starts to touch on like constitutional issues and interstate commerce, and Law Department was like, we're going to have a long report for this one. So setting all of that aside, because I'm not an attorney, I just fight with them, the complexity and diligence of inspection that would be required to figure this out if this became law would be immense. We acknowledge there is a serious concern in our neighborhoods presented by dollar stores. There's a report that I provided to you that was done by some JHU folks, in which I was anonymously quoted actually, when I said, you don't need a zoning fix. You need a licensing mechanism. That's what allows you to get at the who, not the general what. Okay, this is the same thing that we always come up with when it comes to liquor stores. You might have a good operation here, you might have a bad operation there. The use is the same, the operations is different, so go after the operator. But business licenses are a difficult thing. It would require, again, some state legislation, but apparently that's possible because it happened in the first place. Continuing on, the definition, again, just borrowed text from what was done at the state level, by way of trying to not catch other uses inadvertently, it excludes grocery stores, pharmacies, retail, where a majority of personal hygiene, so like, those Rite Aid type stuff, and primarily resale consumer goods, used things. However, the one that caught my attention is a store that offers for sale gasoline, diesel fuel, or on-site electric charging capabilities for vehicles. Now, to us, we combine all of that into a fuel station. So if you have a honest-to-God dollar store and you put an electric charging station out in front of it, you escape this definition. It just doesn't work. The biggest one was it requires a community benefits agreement as a condition before the conditional use can be approved. This is hugely of concern. You just can't do that. In the JHE report, they double down and go farther and say there should be some requirements in there for adequate staffing levels, using local vendors, healthy food options.
Can we just eliminate the whole discussion regarding the JHU report?
Yeah, sure.
That's unbelievable.
So
Good intent, but
in the bill, it and unfortunately I'll go after it again. It says half-mile separation between units. or existing and new proposed locations. So we got some help from BDC and got a location of, to the best of our knowledge, all the dollar store type businesses, which are the dots here with a half-mile buffer around them. And then the colors underneath are all of the variety of C1 through C5, including subzones of those. So this is what that would look like. The report, not to be mentioned, said 1 mile, that's what that would look like. I had to do it. Our GIS team did a lot of work for me. I got to thank you, Jamie, if you're listening. So what does that look like by way of percentage? So the half-mile rings, and these numbers are in acres, it would strike 58% of our commercial zonings, all of them, across the city. Now, in theory, the BMZA could, I think, offer a variance of that if they were brave enough to do so. But if it goes out to a mile, it strikes 92% of our business districts entirely within the city. So all of this to say, we understand there are concerns that neighborhoods have with dollar stores. This is a real thing. The problem is zoning is not the tool to get there from here. So we have to recommend disapproval based on those concerns. I hate walking in with nothing to offer in return. The only thing I can think to suggest is if a business license model is not possible in a feasibly short period of time, encouraging agencies to work together with stepped-up enforcement, some kind of tiger team could probably figure this out, akin to what we did with 21st century schools of, okay, we can't get more money to clean up sidewalks and safe crossings, but if we focus our efforts in those areas, maybe some improvements can be had. And again, all this doesn't touch a lot of the problems when you try and throw zoning at this of, once you approve a use, if it changes an owner and the next owner is bad and the first one was good, the use is still approved, right? It just doesn't work. So it's unfortunate, and I don't have any really brilliant ideas to solve the problem other than to acknowledge, yes, it is a problem, but this isn't it.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, the best thing to do is to write back to the sponsors of the bill and say, although we recognize and appreciate your intent here, zoning is way too blunt of an instrument to try and use on trying to solve this problem. And here are the deficiencies that we believe are presented in here. And this should really be a code enforcement issue. And, we would be delighted to work with the council, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But I'm reading this and I'm like going, how is this? I mean, limiting it to the dollar figure that's just a logistical nightmare.
There's so many layers of problem.
I mean, even if you had a regular store that had a sale, they might dip into that territory inadvertently, not that we would notice it. But
again, I mean, the intent, obviously very well conceived, but are there any comments from the commission? I mean, we've been here a while. I'd be delighted to allow anybody to ask Eric any questions if there are such. Commissioner Joel.
I appreciate the intent, given that dollar stores really do actually hurt communities, but I don't think this is the right avenue to which we should address this issue, so thank you for that.
Commissioner Collins?
Yeah, this one is just screaming at me because we've seen a lot of efforts by communities to control the numbers of certain kinds of service providers or commercial. And it has been my experience that that's not the way you can do it. You run into all sorts of problem issues, and I think it is an enforcement nightmare. Even if you could do it, I don't think legally you can do it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all the methadone locations that are in some communities, or group housing. That was something else that came up before us. So I know I have heard both councilwomen talk about this as being a bad thing for communities, having them chock-a-block next to each other. But I agree, this isn't the answer.
Commissioner Horn.
I agree. Good intent, but the way they've gone about it, I think, has several issues for me.
Deputy Mayor Williams?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. The report from I don't know what school it is from Hopkins, but it's embarrassing that it's a policy recommendation because the policies are not implementable. And ill-conceived. And so there are policies that can be done, but I would appreciate a thorough report that could actually identify and articulate the rationale for a radius restriction and a community benefits agreement. They do not do none of that. It'd be helpful if they spent time doing those sorts of things. So, yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think there are solutions that can be done in the zoning code. I'm happy to work with the sponsor of the bill. If you communicate that to Mr. Tiso, or to the Council Vice President and to Senator Washington.
And it's a teaching moment for those JHU students. Vice Chair Stevenson.
They just wanted to like finish their class and get out of the, yeah.
No, I mean, I appreciate their help and everything. Be bold and, do that kind of stuff. Now say, okay, here's the reality.
Agree with everyone, a little bit disappointed because I was hoping that I was going to get the vote to abolish dollar stores today.
You can make a motion.
They're extremely, harmful and predatory, and we need to find a solution. Agree that this isn't it. My only question is there any other example of a zoning rule around density of a use, like anything else that says you can only have so many of these in this district?
The only thing I'm aware of is adult establishments. And
Adult establishments.
yeah, that is the only thing that I've seen historically zoning categorically, not just here, where it's very limited, but it gets to be a problem where when you start looking at the degree to which you are excluding new uses, and I would suspect that, it was done deliberately to try and minimize the new locations, but for that exact reason, if you functionally zone them out, that becomes an issue.
There was an effective liquor.
And this is where, really the licensing aspect is the correct tool. If you have a problem owner, you go after that owner, you shut them down, right? And I understand there's complexities with creating and funding, underlying funding, and then, having that form of enforcement mechanism, but that's really what you need. If you've got a bad operator, you stop that operator. If you do enough of those, then hopefully the new ones won't come because it's not worth the investment only to have it taken away. And then, God forbid, they actually operate well and are a benefit to the community. Well, okay, good, mission accomplished. But short of a license scheme to help positively control that, I just don't know what else to suggest that would target the correct things, not target the incorrect things, and just work.
So does the state enabling legislation that was passed allow for licensing and other types of control?
Well, no, because it's purely in the land use article. Again, it doesn't actually have any effect because it just says Baltimore City may adopt things to do this thing, so. But it's in zoning.
So is there anything prohibiting the council from passing a licensure? Do they need any enabling legislation from the state to regulate that particular use in the city?
I don't think so, but I didn't get
That would be a
much
good-
time to speak with a law department.
Yeah, that would be a good question to ask law, so that when you get back to the council person, you can say, and we've checked with law, and you are fully entitled right now to go after, some licensing. But we will absolutely entertain a motion by Vice Chair Stevenson to abolish dollar stores in the city. So, anything else, Vice Chair?
No.
Commissioner Allen.
About 99 cents.
This is how long we've been here. Our mic battery has died. So we must borrow yours for a moment. Oh, thank you. I actually was going to ask what Eric did, so it'll save us some time. Because I remembered, I don't know if it was billboards, definitely adult entertainment, and not just methadone, but those types of establishments.
Actually, you're right. So with billboards, there was a federal law that controlled cigarette and alcohol advertising within X distance of highways, but it's moot because the only new billboards that we allowed at all in this city and have for decades are now within the areas of special signage control. So, but yes,
And
thank you.
liquor stores, I think. I think I heard Chris say that.
It's a liquor license issue, and they're not allowed within 300 feet of a church or school.
But that's a state law requirement.
Yeah.
But we
Liquor
effectively
is a state agency.
zoned out liquor sales in corner and convenience stores through the zoning. We prohibited them in certain zoning classifications, and they had to come back before, the council person to get, the proper zoning. So we have effectively done that, but it was a very specific liquor sales. So we have effectively done that. Marcia, where were you? We've effectively done that for liquor, but it was because it's liquor and not just general
And
retail
because-
sales.
And many of those,
There's a license that defines it as liquor.
and many of them were in non-conforming residential corner stores, right? And so going back in the Wayback Machine, I joined the department in 2000, I understand in the late 90s, there was an attempt to adjust the zoning code to better align with the liquor license types at the time, but for some reason that didn't, the state part did not happen. And that's why you could end up having package sales in a tavern, and then you got the de facto liquor stores that technically had a land use as a tavern. So, there's a couple of layers in there, but predominantly the driver behind it is the state controls.
And This is only
Commissioner McCoach.
tangentially related, but we got rid of the advertising plastered on the liquor stores and the smoking advertising. Anyway, the only other thing I wanted to say is sadly, the dollar stores are a substitute for grocery stores that are lacking in most of the probably all of the areas where the dollar stores are locating. So that's another issue that's very much related. They're serving a need, and unfortunately, badly.
Commissioner McCoach.
I'll bring it home with only one comment, and that was I recall being here when we had the same discussion about corner drugstores and their proliferation on two or three corners on an intersection, and as well as behavioral health facilities. And it was really clear from the law department that we're just not in a position to manage them through these methods. So I don't think there's anything really to be done with this legislation.
Yeah.
I have no questions. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak?
God bless you.
Waited and waited.
I just want to say I'm the representative from Vice President Middleton's office, and you all have made perfect points. So I will definitely take all of that into consideration. It is a.
And your name?
It is a.
And your name?
Oh, Jasmine Barnes from Vice President Middleton's office. But like I was saying, I take in all of the points that you guys made. One of the largest points being that they are being used as grocery stores, and they're not really getting nutritional value that they do need. So, and it's been a high influx. We're talking corner to corner. They're everywhere, and they're not really serving the needs of the community. So I do appreciate you all's time.
Please bring back to Councilwoman, Vice President Middleton, that the deputy mayor has offered his help to try and address this issue, which I think, because of his land use legal background, I think that would be probably very appropriate to opine. I mean, we understand her intent and we appreciate it. It's just, zoning is a very blunt tool to solve a very precise issue. So, however, does anybody have any questions for the speaker?
Thank you for waiting.
Yes, thank you very much for your patience. So with that, is there anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we ban dollar stores in Baltimore City. Do I have a second? All right, I think, does anybody have a motion to make? I think we have to physically
If
make
we're
a
gonna
motion.
adopt the staff report, I guess also would add another thought about this is being in New York, the bodega culture is sort of similar to dollar store, but people like that. So we gotta think about, don't like bodegas?
They're entirely different.
not the same. Well,
I used to buy fresh broccoli and.
Well, I know, so I'm saying, but my point being that there is a use category that people like that is in this, that as defined in this zoning code legislation would be prohibited, but people like, so that's why the licensing and some narrow regulation, if we don't like dollar stores because they're understaffed or are chains or are deleterious in the neighborhood, that's one thing we should be focusing on versus just a blunt tool of having cheap stuff in a small space.
Good point. So, so you made a motion?
Motion to
Accept
accept
the
the staff
staff
report.
findings and disapprove of the proposed bill.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, will you call a roll?
Robin Allen.
Approved.
Marsha Collins.
Approved.
Lee Horn.
Approve.
Claudia Jolin.
Approved.
Doug McCoach.
Approve.
Justin Williams.
Approve the motion.
Eric Stevenson. And Sean Davis.
Approve. With that, we are adjourned.